Warrior Lore. Chapter 1533. As soon as the legalism youth finished speaking, everyone became curious. Following his gaze, everyone's gaze immediately fell on Du Xiaofu as they sized him up curiously. Be careful. That guy is doing it on purpose. Mu Yuming and Yu Bufan, who were standing behind Du Xiaofu, kindly reminded Du Xiaofu. This was because the legalism youth on the martial proof platform was none other than the second legalism youth that Du Xiaofu had defeated in one move yesterday. Everyone was from the outside world. In the face of legalism's strength, they subconsciously gathered together. At this moment, Du Xiaofu also raised his head slightly and looked at the legalism youth on the martial proof platform. He smiled faintly and shook his head directly. His voice was neither fast nor slow as he said, I never challenge someone who is lost to me. That's Qin Jia from legalism, right? He actually lost to that youth? Rumor has it that in the Sky City yesterday, there was a strong person from the outside world who defeated Qin Jia in one move. It seems like this rumor isn't baseless. Qin Jia came to take revenge on purpose. The surrounding people discussed in low voices. It seemed like some people had already heard some rumors. Brat, yesterday was just an accident. After leaving the martial proof platform, you lost your courage. The surrounding discussions naturally couldn't escape the legalism youth, Qin Jia's eyes and ears. His pale face was slightly gloomy. A loser doesn't need to be brave. I'm the war god. Even if I can't win, I'm not someone that you can challenge just because you want to. Du Xiaofu stood with his large sword in his hand as he stared at Qin Jia on the martial proof platform. In the end, you just don't dare. Qin Jia stared at Du Xiaofu. Who says that I don't dare? I'm the war god. Why would I be afraid of you? It's just that I don't want to fight with you now. Du Xiaofu shouted as his eyes flashed. It seems like you're just average. The so-called god of war? He's just someone who overestimates himself. Many of the spectators were originally looking at Du Xiaofu with anticipation, but when they saw Du Xiaofu's cowardly appearance, they were shocked. Although this young man from the outside world was extraordinary in the outside world, in the eyes of the 9 great clans, he was nothing more than an ordinary person. It seems like I've overestimated you. The people of the outside world don't even have the guts to fight. Let's call it a day. Qin Jia smiled when he heard the discussions around him. He had no intention of continuing the battle. After all, he had already achieved what he wanted. I'm just disdainful of you. If a loser like you wants to challenge me, you'll definitely have to pay a price. Be it domain-grade medicinal pills, celestial tools, secret bones, or heaven-grade cultivation techniques, I'll accept all of them. Otherwise, who would want to fight a loser like you? If every loser wants to challenge me, I'll die from exhaustion. Du Xiaofu's voice was loud enough for the spectators to hear. He was very arrogant. That brat is really bold. He opened his mouth and said domain-grade medicinal pills, celestial tools, and heaven-grade cultivation techniques. A young man said indifferently with a slight smile, He's just bluffing. He's just trying to boost his courage. A young man said with disdain. He didn't have any expectations. Ha ha ha. Qin Jia originally planned to leave, but when he heard this, he stood on the stage and laughed loudly. He looked at Du Xiaofu and waved his hand. A palm-sized exquisite jade bottle appeared in his palm. Finally, he waved his hand and landed on the edge of the stage. He said, You're a talisman master, so you should know about the sacred wood pulp. If I lose, the sacred wood pulp is yours. If you lose, you'll have to kowtow to me 3 times. Qin Jia was very arrogant. Although he had lost the day before and had been defeated in one move, he didn't take Du Xiaofu seriously. He had lost the day before because his cultivation had been suppressed to the initial stage of the martial honorable realm. He was at the peak of the chaotic element martial honorable realm and was only a step away from breaking through to the nirvana realm. Qin Jia didn't believe that the brat could reach his cultivation. If they fought now, he would be able to trample the brat to death. The sacred wood pulp. Qin Jia actually has this item. When Qin Jia threw out the sacred wood pulp, it immediately caused the spectators, who had lost their expectations, to be excited again. The sacred wood pulp was rumored to be a rare sacred spiritual wood. It could only be produced when one broke through to the demon domain realm after becoming a demon. A small drop of the sacred wood pulp was enough to greatly benefit a talisman master's primordial spirit and strengthen it. It was also important to a martial cultivator. The small bottle of sacred wood pulp was comparable to the value of a domain-grade initial stage medicinal pill. To a certain extent, especially for a talisman master, the value of the sacred wood pulp was even greater than that of a domain-grade initial stage medicinal pill. There were too few spiritual herbs in the world that could strengthen one's primordial spirit. Chinja, let's have a duel. I bet the sacred wood pulp on a domain-grade initial stage medicinal pill. Sacred wood pulp, Chinja, how about we have a duel? In an instant, there was a hubbub of voices around the martial-proof platform. Many people from the big forces couldn't help but ask for the sacred wood pulp. Don't snatch it. The sacred wood pulp is mine. Don't snatch it from me. Du Xiaofu's voice rang out and a smile appeared on his face as he jumped onto the martial-proof platform. This brat really dares to go up and fight. Does that brat want the sacred wood pulp so badly that he doesn't want his life? No wonder. The people outside have never seen such a treasure. Some people were surprised and some people looked down on him. However, the crowd gradually calmed down and looked at the martial-proof platform with anticipation. Sacred wood pulp, I accept your challenge. Du Xiaofu looked at Chinja and nodded seriously. Then, with undisguised passion in his eyes, he pounced on the sacred wood pulp that Chinja had placed at the edge of the martial-proof platform. Brat, wait until you have the ability to take it. Chinja attacked and his voice was cold. The aura of the peak chaotic element martial honored realm in his body soared into the sky and swept out like a tornado. Chila. In the next instant, Chinja waved his hand. Blazing runes that filled the surroundings intertwined and instantly transformed into a dazzling illusory spear. It was blazing like lightning and pierced through the void towards Du Xiaofu. Chinja's attack was exactly the same as yesterday, but there was a world of difference in its power. It wasn't difficult for people with discerning eyes to see that Chinja was going all out just like yesterday. He wanted to defeat Du Xiaofu in one move. It didn't matter if he killed Du Xiaofu. Chinja wanted to use one move to wash away the humiliation of being defeated in one move the day before. The long spear was crystal clear, and it emitted a towering aura. It pierced through the void, and there were pitch-black spatial cracks that spread and destroyed everything. Sneak attacks are shameful, Du Xiaofu shouted. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he dodged in a panic. His body was wrapped in dazzling runes, and he retreated quickly. He activated several types of beast energy. Roar. With the activation of several types of beast energy, Du Xiaofu barely managed to dodge Chinja's spear. However, after several dangerous encounters, Du Xiaofu's steps were messy and his hair was disheveled. He was panting heavily. Chinja was stunned. He had wanted to defeat Suimo in one move, but he hadn't expected Suimo to dodge his spear after a series of attacks. At that moment, Chinja had a feeling that if he had used a little more strength, he would have been able to defeat Suimo. However, he had missed by a little. Continue. Chinja continued to attack. He was violent and vigorous. He was as fast as lightning and powerful as thunder. He used various methods to attack Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu could only retreat continuously without any strength to defend himself. It was undeniable that Chinja was very strong. Although he was only at the peak of the chaotic element martial honorable realm, he was extraordinary. Du Xiaofu retreated continuously. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Suimo had been in danger several times. However, he had managed to dodge the attacks in panic and luck. He was battered and exhausted. I didn't expect Suimo to be so capable. However, he won't be a match for Chinja. Someone said that Du Xiaofu was going to be defeated. Many people had expected that Suimo would be able to withstand so many moves from Chinja. However, Suimo shouldn't be a match for Chinja. At that moment, Chinja had gained the upper hand. However, he wasn't happy at all. He hadn't been able to defeat Suimo for a long time. This was completely different from what he had expected. He had gradually lost his patience. After forcing Du Xiaofu to retreat with one move, Chinja's eyes were cold. Runes surged all over his body. The runes were densely covered with mysterious runes. A terrifying aura gushed out. Just the power alone was enough to make the people around him unable to resist. Qinzhi wanted to activate his martial veins. He wanted to go all out and defeat Suimo as quickly as possible. He didn't want to delay any longer. After a long time, even if he won, it would be equivalent to him losing. Taking advantage of this moment, everyone clearly saw Du Xiaofu's nervous expression reveal a joyous expression in front of everyone's eyes. As his hand seals were formed, many array flags were immediately formed in his hands. They shook the hearts and souls of the surrounding people. Natural energy was channeled over, causing the wind and clouds to surge. Boom! Qinzhi's martial veins were activated. Its power was terrifying. However, at that moment, Du Xiaofu's talisman array was also activated. The 8-star chaotic element array was the first to envelop Qinzhi. Boom! Suddenly, the wind and clouds surged on the martial-proof platform. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. This talisman array was extraordinary. Many disciples of the big clans praised it. Boom! Boom! Then, within the talisman array, Qinzhi roared angrily. He used all his strength to break the talisman array. The talisman array shook and collided violently. In the end, there were beastly roars and crazy shouts from within the talisman array. Qinzhi was already going all out. Boom! Boom! Finally, the talisman array was forcefully broken. It turned into monstrous runes and energy that swept across the martial-proof platform. Traces of blood flowed out from the corner of Du Xiaofu's mouth, and his face turned pale. However, Qinzhi, who had broken out of the talisman array, was in a much more miserable state. Just now, Qinzhi had used all his strength to break out of the talisman array. He was battered and exhausted. His hair was messy, and his aura was extremely weak. In the end, Qinzhi even used his trump card to break out of the talisman array. Roar! At that moment, just as Qinzhi broke out of the talisman array, Du Xiaofu used his beast energy. The talisman array turned into a giant bear and slapped Qinzhi off the martial-proof platform. Puff! Qinzhi spat out a mouthful of blood. His body smashed into the square. Du Xiaofu's final attack had caused him to be severely injured. He didn't even have the strength to struggle and get up. Sigh. Qinzhi was too impatient. He gave that brat a chance to set up the talisman array. Someone felt sorry for Qinzhi. If Qinzhi had taken the easy way out, that brat would definitely not be his opponent. As long as he didn't have the chance to set up the talisman array, that brat would definitely lose. Huff, huff. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu panted heavily as if he had used up all of his energy. He looked like he had miraculously won by a hair's breadth. He immediately held the saintwood pulp in his hand and looked around. He proudly said, "I've said it before. I'm the war god. I'm invincible." Chapter 1534. That kid's luck is not bad, but he has some strength too. He actually defeated Qinzhi. A portion of sacred wood pulp. That's a precious treasure to strengthen the primordial spirit. After consuming the sacred wood pulp, that kid's primordial spirit will be further improved. At that time, he'll probably be even stronger. It's already commendable that such a spiritual talisman master could emerge from the outside world. Legalism has really profited this time. Discussions were going on all around. Among the various clans and forces, there were many people with extraordinary insight who expressed their pertinent opinions. Even if that guy had only relied on luck to defeat Qinzhi, it was still not bad, especially since that guy was only a spiritual talisman master from the outside world. He won. The war god really won. Mu Yuming, Yu Bufan, and many others were excited. They had been on tenterhooks all this time. They didn't expect that guy to really win. Humph, who wanted the sacred wood pulp just now. You can continue to fight with me as long as you take out treasures that are not inferior to the sacred wood pulp. If you win, you can take the sacred wood pulp. If you lose, you have to leave behind your treasures. I'm an invincible war god. Be careful that I don't win all your treasures. Du Xiaofu stood on the martial-proof platform as if he had no intention of walking down and spoke nonsense. This guy won with great difficulty. Let's just take the sacred wood pulp down. It'll be terrible if he offends the top experts. It'll be easy to provoke public anger. Mu Yuming said, clenching his fists. He was even more anxious than Du Xiaofu. However, Du Xiaofu's arrogance had already infuriated many experts in the surroundings. His arrogant words, as if he did not place the various clans and factions in the surroundings in his eyes, had already caused the expressions of many experts to become displeased. Moreover, many of them had originally coveted the Saintwood pulp. Kid, a domain-grade elixir. If you win, it's yours. If you lose, leave the sacred wood pulp behind. How about a medium-grade celestial artifact? Suddenly, many people's eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu. They could teach that arrogant guy a lesson and also get the sacred wood pulp. Why not? Swish! A ray of light shot out and landed steadily at the edge of the martial-proof platform. It was also a jade bottle. At this moment, even through the jade bottle, he could feel the rich energy. It could make people feel relaxed and happy. The aura was exactly the same as the holy wood pulp in Du Xiaofu's hands. What a coincidence. I also have a portion of sacred wood pulp. If you win, both portions will be yours. If you lose, both portions will be mine. A young man with a slender figure was a step faster than the others and directly walked onto the martial-proof platform. This young man was dressed in a tight black shirt, which accentuated his tall and straight figure. He had a very good temperament, and his hooked nose gave off a sharp feeling. This black-robed youth did not deliberately suppress his aura, which was similar to Qin Zhe's. However, his aura was at the pinnacle of the primordial origin beast supremacy level. He was a demonic beast. On the martial-proof platform, everyone saw that Du Xiaofu's expression had clearly stiffened, and he revealed a slightly worried expression. That guy is too arrogant. Everyone was secretly laughing, waiting to see a good show. Don't worry. As a member of the Demon Vulture clan, I, Yu Rue, will never take advantage of others. You just had a great battle and have consumed too much energy. I can give you a blood-lipid soul-boosting grass. If you win, it's all yours. The black-robed youth spoke and took out a blood-red spiritual grass that was suffused with multicolored light and fluctuated with rich energy. He placed it beside the holy wood pulp. The spiritual grass was crystal clear, and people could not help but want to take a bite of it. The blood-lipid soul-boosting grass is rare. There was a lot of discussion around. The blood-lipid soul-boosting grass was also a precious medicine to strengthen the primordial spirit. Looking at the blood-lipid soul-boosting grass's age, its value was not much lower than that of the holy wood pulp. There are no good people in the Demon Vulture clan. Yu Rue is clearly tempting that guy. The Demon Vulture clan has always been keen on the cultivation of beast souls. Yu Rue's goal is just to strengthen his beast soul with the holy wood pulp. At the same time, he can defeat that guy and also put down the face of legalism. Those who knew the Demon Vulture clan well said they did not believe in the character of the Demon Vulture clan. Okay, I agree. However, on the martial-proof stage, Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and agreed. His eyes were greedily fixed on the blood-lipid soul-boosting grass and the holy wood pulp. That guy is too greedy. Someone shook his head and sighed. After defeating Qin Zhe, that guy had already exhausted his energy. At this moment, he was facing Yu Rue of the Demon Vulture clan. Greed could kill. Then let's start. Yu Rue of the Demon Vulture clan smiled, revealing a smile. Some demonic aura emerged from the depths of his eyes, gradually becoming dazzling, revealing a pitch-black color. The aura on Yu Rue's body fluctuated, and those who were not strong enough had to use their martial arts to resist. That kind of aura could affect people's primordial spirit. Boom! Yu Rue of the Demon Vulture clan directly attacked. His aura burst out, and demonic aura billowed. He knew that Yu Rue was a talisman array master. Although he knew that Yu Rue might not have the strength to set up another talisman array, he did not dare to be careless. Legalism's Qin Zhe had been defeated because of carelessness. He wanted to directly defeat that kid and win the sacred wood pulp, which was tantamount to secretly humiliating legalism. I'll fight you to the death. But at this moment, Du Xiaofu suddenly shouted. With a sweep of his battle robe, hand seals immediately condensed. Suddenly, an ancient aura burst out from his body, and the runes in front of him quickly gathered and arranged, finally condensing into a spiritual stove and talisman cauldron. Boom! A blazing aura spread out, and the mysterious runes of the talisman flickered incessantly. White, green, black, red, 4 kinds of runes flickered. The mysterious runes of the talisman cauldrons lingered, as if they could change endlessly, giving birth to all things in the world. Blazing flames jumped, and the mysterious runes of the 4-colored spiritual stove and talisman cauldron were boundless. It was indescribably mysterious. A 4-colored spiritual stove and talisman cauldron. That kid really has some ability. Many powerhouses in the surroundings trembled, as if they were under some kind of great pressure. That spiritual stove and talisman cauldron were extraordinary. Walala, everything happened too fast. In the surroundings of the spiritual stove and talisman cauldron, condensed by Du Xiaofu, an immense pressure descended. Afterwards, the spiritual stove and talisman cauldron expanded, directly enveloping the space around the demon vulture clan's Yu Rui, enveloping him inside. That demon vulture clan's Yu Rui originally wanted to act instantly, but he didn't expect the opponent to act even faster than him, immediately condensing a spiritual stove and talisman cauldron. As a talisman master, no one would dare rashly use a spiritual stove and talisman cauldron. In case of an accident, it wouldn't be as simple as suffering heavy injuries. Therefore, Yu Rui didn't expect that the human would directly throw out a spiritual stove and talisman cauldron from the very beginning, and moreover, it was a 4-colored one. Enveloped by a blazing aura, the flames inside the spiritual stove and talisman cauldron were also filled with runes, capable of burning everything. Yu Rui activated his main body. It was a gigantic demonic vulture that was as black as ink. Below its belly, there was a layer of white. Its entire body was covered in a scale-like domain that was as sharp as blades. It was suffused with demonic qi that could invade the souls of others. Rumble, Du Xiaofu's 4-colored spiritual stove and talisman cauldron also expanded, enveloping the demon vulture inside. Overflowing flames surged, as if trying to refine that massive demon vulture into a bloody mist. Rumble, this kind of confrontation was beyond everyone's expectations. On the vast martial-proof platform, that massive demon vulture's whole body was covered in runes. Surging with demonic energy, it fiercely collided with the 4-colored spiritual stove and talisman cauldron, causing all kinds of runes and flames to flood the sky. This kind of confrontation was tyrannical and direct, as well as the most ferocious, attracting everyone's attention. Yu Rui was an innate ability of the true demon vulture clan. Attacking spiritual stoves and talisman cauldrons, it exploded like a chain of bombs, causing Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove and talisman cauldron to sway, on the verge of shattering. It even caused cracks to appear on Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove and talisman cauldron. Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove and talisman cauldron swayed like a small boat in a storm, but in the end, it still managed to resist. In the surroundings, Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove and talisman cauldron directly enveloped the demon vulture clan's Yu Rui, gaining the upper hand from the very beginning. You can't trap me. Finally, the demon vulture clan's Yu Rui finally broke free from the encirclement of Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove and talisman cauldron, but he didn't break Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove and talisman cauldron. Aoyuyu. However, what welcomed Yu Rui was the sudden appearance of Du Xiaofu's series of condensed beast energy. Like a beast tide, the beast energy crashed into Yu Rui's family, which had been burned to the point where their flesh was torn and blood was dripping. Pung pung pung. After a series of collisions, Yu Rui's massive demon vulture body was sent flying and smashed below the martial-proof platform. In the end, he was bitten by a flood dragon. That malevolent flood dragon's big mouth almost bit off one of his wings. Uft! Yu Rui's massive demon vulture body kept spitting out blood. His black eyes were filled with fear, but more than that, they were lifeless. This Yu Rui of the demon vulture clan didn't even know how he had lost. His defeat was somewhat baffling, but it was a fact that he had been defeated. I told you I was invincible. I won again. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu appeared to be extremely happy. His pale face was full of smiles. Then, Du Xiaofu placed the blood-fat soul increasing grass and 2 portions of Saint wood pulp neatly in front of him, as if he was presenting a treasure. He looked around and said proudly, "Who else wants to challenge me? Just take out enough treasures. But I believe no one will dare to challenge me. After all, I am invincible. Then, I will also go down." As if he was talking to himself, Du Xiaofu's voice was loud enough for everyone to hear clearly. Then, he prepared to go down the platform as if he was afraid that someone would challenge him again. 2 domain grade elixirs. If you lose, the 2 portions of Saintwood pulp and the blood fat soul increasing grass will be mine. If you can win, the 2 domain grade elixirs will be yours. Du Xiaofu wanted to go down the platform, but he was one step too late. A crisp sound was heard. 2 brocade boxes were half opened. They flew across the sky and landed beside the Saintwood pulp that Du Xiaofu was about to take away. Walala! The 2 elixirs, half the size of a baby's fist, gave off a medicinal fragrance. The rich energy channeled the energy of heaven and earth, causing the surroundings of the martial-proof platform to surge. Then, a graceful woman also crossed the space and jumped onto the martial-proof platform. She blocked Du Xiaofu's path. The woman was only 25 or 26 years old. She was extremely beautiful, had a noble temperament, and had vast eyes. The woman's eyes first fell on the Saintwood pulp and the blood fat soul increasing grass. Then, she looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Zhang Yunshuang from the School of Vertical and Horizontal, you said you were invincible. I believe you have the guts to continue the battle." Chapter 1535. Oh no! He has angered the crowd again. Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the others were helpless. They wished they could jump up and kick that guy a few times. It wasn't easy for him to win, so why did he have to be so arrogant? Now, he was in big trouble. Even the School of Vertical and Horizontal was stirring up trouble. Du Xiaofu didn't look at the woman in front of him, but at the 2 domain-grade elixir pills on the martial-proof platform. His eyes lit up. After a while, Du Xiaofu looked at the woman in front of him weakly. His eyes were filled with fear, and he seemed to be stuttering as he said, "You seem to be an 8-star Nirvana spiritual talisman master. This is a little unfair, not to mention that 2 domain-grade elixir pills are worth more than 2 portions of sacred wood pulp and a blood fat increasing soul grass. But for a spiritual talisman master, it's not necessarily so. As a spiritual talisman master, you should know the value of these pills. It's unfair, too unfair. I can't win, but I won't accept an unfair battle. I still have a middle-grade magic weapon." Zhang Yunshuang raised her eyebrows and took out another middle-grade magic weapon. "You're also an 8-star Nirvana spiritual talisman master. I just fought 2 rounds in a row, and it's still unfair." Du Xiaofu shook his head. Although his eyes were shining, he still seemed to be rational and wanted to find an excuse to not continue the battle. That guy is in trouble now. Zhang Yunshuang is an 8-star Nirvana spiritual talisman master. That guy doesn't put anyone in his eyes. He thinks that he has the right to be arrogant after winning 2 rounds. It's good to learn a lesson. People around spoke, waiting to watch the show. Add 5 more elementary grade magic weapons, 3 honorable grade Nirvana spiritual pills, and 20 honorable grade mixed essence spiritual pills. If you win, it's all yours. Zhang Yunshuang waved her hand, and light flowed out from her long sleeve. Waves of energy fluctuated, and in the end, she took out 5 more elementary grade magic weapons, 3 honorable grade Nirvana spiritual pills, and 20 honorable grade mixed essence spiritual pills. It shocked everyone. Countless people were shocked, and some even secretly swallowed their saliva. At this moment, the treasures that Zhang Yunshuang took out were definitely all that she had. Even a 9-star talisman master in the outside world would not be able to take out such a large sum. It was obvious that Zhang Yunshuang was determined to get the 2 portions of sacred wood pulp and blood fat soul-boosting grass. She wanted to use enough temptation to make her opponent agree to a fight. Treasures, they are all treasures. Mu Yuming, Yu Bufan, and the others stared at the pile of treasures on the martial-proof stage, their eyes almost spitting fire. "All right, if I win, these are all mine. All of them are mine." Du Xiaofu's eyes were slightly red as he stared at the pile of treasures on the martial-proof platform. He gritted his teeth and nodded. Seeing Du Xiaofu nod, a faint smile appeared on Zhang Yunshuang's beautiful face. This smile was somewhat indifferent. Boom. In the next instant, a powerful aura instantly swept out from Zhang Yunshuang's graceful and slender body like an erupting volcano, and it whistled through the martial-proof platform. As this aura whistled out, the atmosphere on the entire martial-proof platform instantly became tense. Rumble. Zhang Yunshuang's body was surrounded by runes as she stared at Du Xiaofu. Her bright eyes were covered by a strange color. The aura of an 8-star Nirvana Talisman Master was released without reservation. A terrifying primordial spirit pressure filled the air, faintly revealing lightning and thunder, causing one's heart to tremble. Zhang Yunshuang has a mortal supreme spirit root. Because she is a Talisman Master, her ranking among her peers in the school of vertical and horizontal is not low. Feeling the terrifying aura pressure, it caused one's primordial spirit to tremble. Many exclamations sounded from all around. Some of the weaker ones were stunned when they felt the primordial spirit pressure from that slender body. That kind of terrifying pressure was no small matter. It was probably enough to crush a cultivator of the same level in the outside world. "I'll let you make the first move." Zhang Yunshuang spoke without any carelessness. The surrounding aura surged like the wind and clouds, and the runes were resplendent. They converged into an enormous storm that spun on the martial-proof platform. Whoosh! The energy storm sucked in all directions, as if it was going to swallow the spatial ripples. Zhang Yunshuang's figure was faintly discernible within the energy storm. She was covered by the runes, and only a blurry, graceful figure could be seen. Looking at the blurry figure within the energy storm, Du Xiaofu narrowed his eyes slightly at the extraordinary pressure. "All right, then I won't hold back." Du Xiaofu spoke, and when he finished speaking, his figure directly appeared within the majestic energy storm. Not many people could clearly see how Du Xiaofu walked into the energy storm. Whoosh! Du Xiaofu's strange appearance was completely beyond Zhang Yunshuang's expectations. It was too fast, so fast that it was unbelievable. That face appeared in front of her. Zhang Yunshuang was surprised. She was about to react, but Du Xiaofu's eyes had already shot out a dazzling light from the runes. It directly enveloped her, causing her to be instantly stunned. Even the energy storm around her began to dissipate. Bang bang. Resplendent rune light burst forth, turning into a stream of energy that struck Zhang Yunshuang's body like a bolt of lightning. Puff. Her graceful figure immediately flew through the air, and she spat out large mouthfuls of blood. In the end, she crashed heavily outside the martial-proof platform. Crack, crack. She landed on the ground and flew backwards. Blood was still spitting out from her mouth, and her eyes were still in a daze. The violent commotion from before instantly calmed down. Zhang Yunshuang, who was an 8-star Nirvana from the school of vertical and horizontal, was defeated in a single move. She was even severely injured. The expressions of the people from the school of vertical and horizontal changed drastically. Immediately, someone went to help Zhang Yunshuang up. Their expressions were very ugly. Zhang Yunshuang's primordial spirit was attacked. That guy is too cunning. His primordial spirit is very strong and very strange. It directly attacked Zhang Yunshuang and then defeated her. Zhang Yunshuang was very careful, but she still couldn't defend herself. The people from the various families and forces in the square were shocked and dumbfounded. Many of the outstanding young men and women were secretly shocked. No one had expected that Zhang Yunshuang, who had a human supreme spiritual root, would be so easily defeated in the blink of an eye. Oh my God! He won again. Miracle! This is a miracle. At this moment, to Mu Yuming, Yu Bufan, and the others, it was a miracle that they had witnessed. Originally, they were already certain that Du Xiaofu would be defeated. Who would have thought that this would happen? Damn it, this is definitely a miracle. Many of the onlookers were also helpless. They looked enviously at the pile of treasures on the martial-proof platform. A spiritual talisman master from the outside world had actually won 3 consecutive miraculous victories. He had won treasures that were enough to move anyone present. It's mine, it's all mine, it's all mine. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu's pale face revealed a smile. Looking at the pile of treasures, he felt wild with joy and was extremely excited. Puffed. On the square, Zhang Yunshuang finally turned around after coughing out a mouthful of blood. Her face was already pale. Zhang Yunshuang's primordial spirit had been injured. Her red lips that were dripping with blood trembled. Looking at Du Xiaofu, she finally said in a gloomy voice, "This is impossible. How can your primordial spirit be so strong? Did I tell you that my primordial spirit is weak? I have been consuming heavenly treasures since I was young. As a spiritual talisman master, my primordial spirit is strong. It's just that your primordial spirit is weak." Du Xiaofu turned around and glared at Zhang Yunshuang. "You biffed." Zhang Yunshuang was speechless. She was so angry that she coughed out blood again. She had the Mortal Supreme's spiritual root and cultivated the top cultivation method of the school of vertical and horizontal to strengthen the primordial spirit. How could her primordial spirit be weak? It was enough to crush any spiritual talisman master in the outside world. Moreover, her opponent was only looking at the spiritual talisman master of the origin. However, she clearly felt that the guy's primordial spirit was much more vigorous than hers. It even had an aura that made her afraid. "But you also sneaked up on me just now. You tricked me." Looking at all her treasures on the martial-proof platform, Zhang Yunshuang's heart ached unbearably. "You already said that it's starting and that I should make the first move. How did I trick you? If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Could it be that the school of vertical and horizontal can't afford to lose? If you have the ability, continue to challenge me." Du Xiaofu was very arrogant. Standing on the martial-proof platform, he said loudly, "After all, I am the invincible god of war." "You biffed." Zhang Yunshuang's heart was filled with anger and unbearable heartache. Her body twitched and she coughed out blood again because of Du Xiaofu. "Master, don't be so smug. Hurry up and come down." Mu Yumming, Yu Bufan, and the others were stunned. That guy actually didn't know when to stop. Once again, he was talking nonsense on the martial-proof platform. Just now, he had won by a miracle. "Haha, people from the school of vertical and horizontal. If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss." A loud laughter rang out as a boorish young man walked out. He was not afraid of the school of vertical and horizontal. He stood in the air, but his gaze landed on the pile of treasures in front of Du Xiaofu on the martial-proof platform. It was enough to make anyone's eyes turn red. After that, he looked at Du Xiaofu with a look of disdain and said, "Since you say you're invincible, let's continue the battle then." "Gongsun Xiong, what do you mean? Even if we want to fight, it's not your turn." A young man walked out from the school of vertical and horizontal. He looked extraordinary and looked at the rough-looking young man with a gloomy expression. "Su Haohui, the school of vertical and horizontal has already lost. Do you want to continue the battle?" The young man called Gong Sun Xiong wasn't afraid of the tough-looking young man. He said with a faint sneer, "It's someone else's turn." "That's right. It's someone else's turn." Another young man walked out. He had an extraordinary temperament and a powerful aura. His gaze landed on the pile of treasures on the martial-proof platform. "Umidba, let's not harm each other." A young monk walked out. His eyes were beautiful and his eyes were bright. There were 9 shining marks on his head. "Immeasurable Lord, we can discuss things, but please don't harm each other." A young man in a Taoist robe walked out. He was tall and straight, and his body was shining with light. He had a Taoist connotation. "That's right. We shouldn't harm each other. You guys should be like this. Don't scare people." Subsequently, a few more extraordinary youths walked out of the sky. All of them had powerful auras and wore smiles on their faces. However, their gazes would intentionally or unintentionally land on the large pile of treasures on the martial-proof platform. Chapter 1536. It was obvious that these extraordinary youths wanted to take part in the competition. They didn't want others to take advantage of them. Gongsun Xiong of the School of Philosophers, Su Haohui of the School of Vertical and Horizontal, Heng Rushi of the School of Buddhism, Guan Lianin of the School of Taoism, Meng Wui of the School of Confucianism, Emoli of the School of Moism, Zhou Wenan of the School of Yin-Yang, Li Chuya of the School of Legalism, and Zhou Yu of the School of Agriculture. Heavens! These terrifying fellows are coming out together. As the extraordinary youths walked out one after another, countless exclamations came from all around the square. At this moment, more and more people came to watch from the vast square around the martial-proof platform. There were many people from the school of legalism, and there were also many followers of legalism. The 9 youths who had just walked out were no strangers to the people from the school of legalism. This time, the other 8 great families had gathered legalism, and many of their younger generation's peak cultivators had come. The youths who had walked out today were all among the younger generation of the various great families. They could at least rank in the top 3 or 4. Take Li Chuya of the legalism, for example. The disciples of the school of legalism knew that his strength could rank in the top 100 of his peers in the legalism. Li Chuya's cultivation was at the peak of the nirvana realm, and he already had 1 foot in the martial field realm. That guy provoked everyone's anger and didn't put the 9 great families in his eyes. That guy won 3 rounds in a row. He's too arrogant. Now, as long as we can defeat him, we can get so many treasures. We can also take the face of the school of legalism and vertical and horizontal. Why not? Li Chuya of the legalism has walked out. He wants to completely restore the face of the legalism. Su Haohui of the school of vertical and horizontal has also walked out. Not only does he want to win back the treasures, but he also wants to restore the dignity of the school of vertical and horizontal. In short, that guy's arrogant words angered the 9 great families. He's doomed to be unlucky. That guy deserves to be arrogant in front of the 9 great families. He's clearly courting death. He still dares to call himself a battle god? Luckily, Heng Qi, Void Spirit, Qi Jiejun, and Jiang Yunfeng didn't come today. Otherwise, my little finger would be able to crush that arrogant fellow. It's still early. Over the next 2 days, the various great clans will be sending representatives. If we want Heng Qi, Master Void Spirit, and Qi Jiejun to make a move, we'll have to wait until the day after tomorrow. They are the representatives of the various great clans. The entire martial-proof platform was in an uproar. Some were shocked, some were gloating. However, at that moment, Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the others had nearly collapsed onto the ground. From the unrestrained uproar all around, Yu Bufan and the others could tell that at this moment, that guy's arrogance had provoked everyone's anger. The young experts of the 9 great clans were all staring at that guy. It was likely that at this moment, it would be too late for him to withdraw even if he wanted to. He's courting death. Mu Yuming, Yu Bufan, and the others couldn't bear the pain in their hearts. Seeing that the pile of treasures was likely to be lost, that guy would most likely be taught a lesson. On the martial-proof platform, everyone looked at each other. Du Xiaofu looked at the 9 extraordinary youths who had walked out and raised his eyebrows. He seemed very surprised, but then he smiled slightly and swept his gaze over those extraordinary youths. What's the meaning of this? Could it be that you all want to challenge me? However, at this moment, no one noticed that Du Xiaofu's gaze had paused on Zhou Yu and Emoli for a while. Those were 2 familiar faces. Du Xiaofu had seen them before in the Tianhuang continent. Kid, don't be too arrogant. You don't have the qualifications to be arrogant here. Since you dare to call yourself a battle god, then let's continue the battle. Su Haohui from the school of vertical and horizontal, who was facing Gongsun Xiong with a gloomy expression, also stared at Du Xiaofu with an unpleasant expression. Defeating Zhang Yunshuang in 1 move was undoubtedly a huge blow to the dignity of the school of vertical and horizontal. He was the most powerful person from the school of vertical and horizontal on the martial-proof platform today. Naturally, he had to redeem the dignity of the school of vertical and horizontal. Moreover, Su Haohui would definitely not watch as Zhang Yunshuang's entire fortune was taken away by that guy. I'm a battle god. I'm invincible. Why should I be afraid of you? Du Xiaofu patted his chest, but his face was very pale. He looked at the 9 extraordinary youths who had walked out and said, however, among the 9 of you, who will challenge me first? Hearing this, the 9 youths looked at each other. Everyone knew that the guy on the martial-proof platform was bluffing. With their strength, any one of them would be able to take him down. However, the problem was that the guy now had a pile of treasures in front of him. If anyone took him down, not only would the school of vertical and horizontal and legalism lose face, they would also be able to take away a pile of treasures. Therefore, at this moment, everyone wanted to make a move themselves. No one would let anyone else make the first move. Looks like you guys can't decide. How about this? Whoever takes out the most valuable treasures that can satisfy me the most can challenge me. How about that? If you win, the sacred wood pulp, blood-lipid soul-increasing grass, and middle-grade Dharma artifacts will all be yours. Du Xiaofu looked at the 9 people in front of him. In front of everyone's eyes, he stuffed a few pills into his mouth and said, "However, I'm invincible. I believe you guys won't dare to challenge me. How about we continue tomorrow? I'll be leaving first today." This guy wants to take the opportunity to slip away. The surrounding people finally understood. The arrogant guy was clearly afraid and wanted to take the opportunity to slip away. In your dreams, since you dare to be arrogant, you'll have to pay the price. I'll give you a chance. Su Haohui from the School of Vertical and Horizontal shouted. With a wave of his sleeve, a ray of light swept out. Waves of vigorous energy suddenly swept out and landed on the Marshall-proof platform. Boom! The fluctuation of energy caused the surroundings of the Marshall-proof platform to tremble. The vigorous energy caused everyone to be dumbfounded and their hearts to beat faster. 3 domain-grade pills, a middle-grade Dharma artifact, and a peak Earth-grade high-grade Dharma artifact. Su Haohui said. His voice reverberated in the surroundings. Only the School of Vertical and Horizontal has these. I can take out these things too. Gongsun Xiong said. With a wave of his sleeve, a large pile of treasures flew out and landed in front of Du Xiaofu on the Marshall-proof platform. Ba, I'll join in the fun too. Immeasurable heavenly sovereign. I'm also tempted. I don't want to fall behind you guys. If you want to compare your wealth, legalism, can take it out too. Rumble. Suddenly, the entire Marshall-proof platform was covered in a ray of light. Energy fluctuations enveloped the entire Marshall-proof platform. The entire Marshall-proof platform was shrouded in clouds and mist, causing the void to become hazy. The 9 extraordinary youths from the 9 great families took out a lot of treasures and piled them up on the Marshall-proof platform like a small mountain. In total, there were nearly 20 middle-grade Dharma artifacts, dozens of domain-grade Dharma pills, and more than 100 honorable nirvana and mixed essence pills. There were also various high-grade Dharma artifacts and Dharma artifacts. What kind of concept was this? The energy fluctuations that were gathered together were enough to cause experts to tremble in fear. Roar. Some of the Dharma artifacts let out the roars of dragons and tigers. There seemed to be a phantom hovering on the Marshall-proof platform. The light was dazzling and shocking. "Oh my God!" everyone exclaimed. No one would have thought that an outsider would cause such a big commotion and alarm the 9 great families. As for the pile of treasures, at this moment, the eyes of everyone present turned red. At the beginning, Zhang Yunshuang's entire wealth was already tempting enough. But at this moment, the 9 extraordinary youths from the 9 great families took out their treasures and gathered them together. No one could remain unmoved. If this pile of treasures was placed on the Kyushu outside, it would be enough to make the major forces fight for it. It would also be enough to attract the old ancestors of the major forces to fight for it. "Oh my God! You Bufon!" Mu Yumming and the others breathed rapidly and their hearts beat faster. The intense energy fluctuations on the Marshall-proof platform and the pile of treasures filled with bright light made them shudder. Enshrouded in light, Du Xiaofu stood in front of a pile of treasures, illuminated by the light. It was unknown whether it was the reflection of the light or the light itself, but it was as brilliant as the sunset. Even the strands of hair behind his head were dyed with the light, and his battle robes were enshrouded in the light. It seems that the treasures taken out are about the same. Du Xiaofu's gaze swept across the treasures in front of him and licked his lips. His whole body was illuminated by the multicolored light of the treasures. He looked at the 9 extraordinary youths and said, "The treasures you took out are about the same. I can't choose." "Little brat, is this fun? Do you know who you are acting so arrogant in front of?" Su Haohui walked out from the group of 9. At this moment, his body was covered with runes and his robe was fluttering in the wind. His flesh and blood began to emit a dazzling light, illuminating his bones. An ancient aura flowed around him and filled the air with majesty. "So what if I give you another, Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit? Take it if you have the ability." Su Haohui was furious. The other 8 families clearly wanted to interfere. That brat on the Marshall-proof platform was extremely arrogant. He wanted to take action and solve all of this. Boom. He threw out a spiritual fruit and circulated the profound chi in his body. An endless aura gushed out from his body and surged violently, causing the surrounding space to shake. He shouted loudly, "Who else wants to fight with me? Let me deal with that brat." Damn, Su Haohui actually has such an abnormal item like the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit. Rumor has it that if one consumes the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit when breaking through to the domain realm, there will be a chance for a supreme being to undergo nirvana. Although it seems that no one has succeeded, the benefits brought by the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit are enough to allow one to be at the top of those at the same level after breaking through, and be able to suppress those at the same level. It is said that Su Haohui's ancestor has an extremely high status in the school of vertical and horizontal. Su Haohui himself is also a person that the school of vertical and horizontal focused on nurturing. That's why he was able to obtain the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit. Although the value of the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit is about the same as a domain-grade elixir, its value is incomparable to Su Haohui's. The surrounding people exclaimed and revealed the origin of the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit. It also made those who did not know what the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit was even more excited. There was actually such an abnormal item in this world that could allow a supreme being to undergo nirvana. Su Haohui even took out the Spirit Supreme Blood Fruit. Gongsun Xiong, Zhou Yu, and the others were also secretly surprised. Hee, Du Xiaofu smiled. His pale face was full of smiles. Suddenly, in front of everyone's eyes, he quickly formed hand seals and directly set up a seal that enveloped the large pile of treasures around him. Brat, what do you mean by this? Chapter 1537. The 9 extraordinary youths from the 9 great families immediately questioned, but none of them were too worried. Legalism was the law of the land. They were members of the 9 great families, so they were absolutely not afraid that this arrogant kid would dare to snatch the treasures in front of them. Du Xiaofu smiled as he looked at Su Haohui and the other 8 from the school of vertical and horizontal. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've accepted all of your challenges. You want to fight all 9 of us?" Zhou Yu of the House of Nong looked at Du Xiaofu with surprise. Damn, that guy thinks he hasn't caused enough trouble. He wants to fight all 9 great families, Zhou Yu, Gongsun Xiong, and the other terrifying geniuses. That kid is really courting death. That guy's eyes have definitely opened after seeing the treasures. He doesn't even want to live anymore. The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone was stunned. Originally, that kid wanted to take the opportunity to slip away. Who would have thought that he would see the treasures and suddenly open his eyes? Many young men and women from the 9 great families had complicated expressions on their faces. That arrogant guy didn't know what the 9 great families represented. He actually wanted to fight all 9 of them at the same time. This was absolutely not putting the 9 great families in his eyes. Arrogance to the extreme. If this matter was spread out, the 9 great families would become a laughing stock in the outside world. Kid, you're too arrogant. Su Haohui's face was gloomy. He had taken out all the treasures, but he didn't expect that kid to still want to fight all of them. This clearly showed that he didn't put him in his eyes and thought that he couldn't win. I can't favor one and discriminate against the other. Since you all want to challenge me, then I must treat you all equally. Du Xiaofu held his head high and puffed out his chest with a righteous look. However, his eyes were fixed on the treasure within the seal. It was obvious that his eyes had been opened by the treasure. Du Xiaofu knew that the value of those treasures was much higher than Zhang Yunshuang's entire wealth. The 9 great clans Imoli, Zhou Yu, and the others shouldn't be able to take out anything more. This pile of treasures made Du Xiaofu very satisfied. Challenge? You're not worthy. Su Haohui stepped onto the Marshall-proof platform with a gloomy face. Under the illumination of the light around him, his bones were sparkling and translucent, flowing with an ancient and terrifying aura. Su Haohui was extraordinary indeed. Talisman markings flickered around his body as a boundless and surging aura surged explosively, and it shook the entire Marshall-proof platform and caused the surroundings to tremble. Looking straight at Du Xiaofu, Su Haohui shouted, "Brat, don't say that I'm taking advantage of you. I'll let you have 3 moves. After 3 moves, I'll make you regret this day. You'll give me 3 moves? Du Xiaofu's seemingly pale face still carried a faint smile, but at the same time, a white divine light suddenly surged, causing the surrounding space to quietly tremble. However, in the next instant, Du Xiaofu stretched out his hands. In an instant, 35 array flags floated in the space between his hands, faintly causing the space in front of him to distort like a fried dough twist. Resplendent rays of light and dazzling talisman markings shone. Array. Following Du Xiaofu's shout, the 35 array flags in his palm instantly swept into the sky, accompanied by a burst of whistling sounds, faintly emitting a mysterious aura. Boom! At this instant, a powerful and vigorous energy immediately surged out from Du Xiaofu's body. Just as Su Haohui's expression abruptly changed, an enormous symbol array that was several thousand feet in size appeared in the sky above the vast martial-proof platform. It covered the sky and the sun as it appeared before everyone's eyes. Rumble. At this moment, the entire sky above the martial-proof platform began to rumble and tremble. The frightening pressure that spread out from the large array caused the expressions of many young experts from the 9 great clans to change. Endless talisman light distorted and gathered around the large array, sealing the surrounding space. This large array was too powerful. The light was resplendent and contained various mysterious abilities, vast and complicated. The entire martial-proof platform was covered by the array, but Su Haohui had yet to react. While his eyes were filled with shock, it was already too late for Su Haohui to dodge. He was immediately trapped within it. This is an 8-star Nirvana symbol array. No one had expected that this little fellow, who appeared to be an arrow at the end of its flight, would actually directly throw out an 8-star Nirvana symbol array at this moment. That brat is pretending to be weak. He is definitely not an 8-star Origin Soul symbol master. Zhou Yu opened his mouth. To be able to set up an 8-star Nirvana symbol array, it was obviously not an ordinary one. That arrogant fellow had definitely concealed his cultivation previously. He is already an 8-star Nirvana symbol master. Zhang Yunshuang, who was supported to the side, had a deathly pale face and a deathly pale expression. At this moment, she was certain that she had been tricked by that arrogant brat. What's going on? Yu Bufan, Mu Yumming, and the others looked at each other in dismay. They looked at the guy who was already an arrow at the end of its flight and was almost at his last breath. Yet, at this moment, he had suddenly erupted and was even able to set up such a terrifying formation. Everyone's expression changed. Looking at the sky covering array that instantly covered the martial-proof platform, the eyes of some of the extraordinary younger generation members from the 9 great clans twitched. That array was very extraordinary. The symbol masters from the 9 great clans present could feel the vastness and strangeness of that array. It was comparable to any array of the same level from the 9 great clans. That is an 8-star peak Nirvana symbol array. I'm afraid that even a domain practitioner would have to pay a price to forcefully break it. A symbol master from the 9 great clans looked at the array that covered the entire martial-proof platform. After a long time, his eyes trembled. Rumble. The array shook. Su Haohui's roar was like thunder, causing the array to tremble continuously. However, it was obviously not an easy task to break the array. Damn, what is that brat doing? At this moment, the spectators in the square clearly saw that at the corner of the martial-proof platform, in front of the pile of treasures sealed under the restriction, that arrogant fellow actually had a leisurely and complacent appearance at this moment. He was currently inspecting everyone's treasures and completely did not pay attention to Su Haohui, who was inside the talisman formation. This made all the experts from the 9 great clans gnash their teeth in hatred. That brat was so arrogant. The martial-proof platform was particularly lively today. News of this immediately spread among the legalism faction. At this moment, more and more people gathered, including many middle-aged and old men from the legalism faction. Rumble. In the end, Su Haohui crazily used all his strength to break the array. He used all the methods of the school of vertical and horizontal and paid a heavy price. After the array was forcefully broken, Du Xiaofu's mouth flowed with blood. However, Only Du Xiaofu himself knew whether the blood was real or fake. With Du Xiaofu's current cultivation and primordial spirit power, having an 8-star Nirvana array broken would not affect him at all. Bang 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 bang. The moment Su Haohui broke out of the array, what awaited him was Du Xiaofu's strange appearance and a series of beast energy like a beast tide. The terrifying impact caused Su Haohui's body to be like a fallen leaf in a storm. After feeling dizzy, he spat out large mouthfuls of blood and heavily smashed into the square below the martial-proof platform. He did not get up again after a few tries. Brat, you hid your cultivation. You did not use up all your energy. You are not an 8-star primordial spirit symbol master. In the end, he was helped up by the people from the school of vertical and horizontal. Su Haohui looked at Du Xiaofu on the martial-proof platform with a blank and hateful gaze. When did I say that I used up all my energy? When did I say that I was an 8-star primordial spirit symbol master? Du Xiaofu asked back and pretended to be at a loss. PFFF, I hate it. Su Haohui was so angry that he vomited blood. His heart was filled with hatred, and he was so aggrieved that he could not speak. That brat had been hiding all this time. Previously, when he was dealing with Gong Jin of the Demon Vulture race, he even used his spiritual furnace and talisman cauldron to give everyone a false impression. Next, on the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu waved his sleeve to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked at the remaining 8 people and said, "Why don't you all give up? It would be bad if I hurt you all. Brat, you have some ability. You are actually a Nirvana Array Talisman Master. Then I will feel at ease and not take advantage of you." Gongsun Xiong stood on the martial-proof platform in the sky. Divine light burst out from his eyes. The surface of his body was densely covered with strange talisman scripts that were glistening. In the end, it enveloped his entire body like a light barrier. His aura surged like a storm. "Brat, let's fight." Gongsun Xiong shouted loudly. His aura shook the entire martial-proof platform. The space around the martial-proof platform shook violently. The space rippled like waves. There was a kind of natural energy that filled the air. There was an indescribable fluctuation that revealed a terrifying aura. Qi. Gongsun Xiong immediately made his move. He did not want to have the same accident as Su Haohui. That arrogant brat was very treacherous. Therefore, once he got on the platform, he immediately made his move and used his full strength. Boom! Gongsun Xiong immediately slapped out a palm and swooped down from the sky. The palm print was wrapped in resplendent talisman scripts. It enveloped an area like a tide and distorted the space. It directly enveloped Du Xiaofu and was about to kill him. However, at this moment, Gongsun Xiong suddenly felt that something was wrong. The space around him suddenly changed and became extremely strange. It was as if he had suddenly appeared in a world of flowers and flowers. Countless graceful women were only wearing thin gauze, dancing lightly and gracefully. Their snow-white figures were faintly discernible, and they were extremely charming and provocative. Gongsun Xiong clearly knew that something was wrong from the beginning. However, he could not help but fall into it. Those beautiful women attracted his attention and made the blood in his body boil. Not good. That brat used an illusion. Gongsun Xiong is in trouble. A young man among the famous families shouted. However, it was too late. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They saw Gongsun Xiong's sluggish face. Then, Du Xiaofu threw a few punches at him like a sandbag. Gongsun Xiong's skin and flesh were lacerated. Blood spurted out. In the end, he fell down from the martial-proof platform. Even at this moment, Gongsun Xiong still had not recovered. He was covered in blood, but there was still a smile in his eyes. It was as if he was having a beautiful dream. Chapter 1538. No one had expected the outcome to be like this. Gongsun Xiong, an expert of the younger generation who was about to step into the domain realm, had been defeated so miserably. When Gongsun Xiong came back to his senses with the help of a few disciples of the famous families, he found that he had been seriously injured and was unable to continue fighting. Ah! Gongsun Xiong roared furiously, his voice shaking the surroundings. It was filled with a deep sense of unwillingness. That kid is too strange. He has endless tricks up his sleeves. We must be careful. No one present was a fool. At this moment, they could all see that the arrogant kid had the right to be arrogant. It was very strange, and they even suspected that he was deliberately pretending to be weak to eat the tiger. However, no one was afraid. They just treated him with caution. They were the most outstanding members of the younger generation of the 9 great families, so they naturally had their own pride. No matter how strong and strange that kid is, can he keep exhausting himself like this? From the looks of it, that kid definitely won't be able to last much longer. The people of the 9 great families all around spoke up, while the spectators of the legalism clenched their teeth. Amitabha, the third Buddhist, Hung Rushi, stepped onto the martial-proof platform. She chanted the name of Buddha, but as soon as she stepped onto the platform, her Buddhist aura illuminated everything. She attacked with all her strength. Du Xiaofu attacked, dodging left and right. He was constantly suppressed and unable to fight back. Du Xiaofu was hit several times by Hung Rushi, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face became paler and paler, and it was becoming more and more difficult for him to continue. However, in the end, Du Xiaofu used the same trick in front of everyone, and he used the spiritual stove talisman cauldron. At this moment, the 4-colored spiritual stove talisman cauldron was much more powerful than when Du Xiaofu had used it before. It fiercely collided with Hung Rushi. Hung Rushi's body was surrounded by layers of Buddha images, and Sanskrit chants were incessant. She used the Buddha images to suppress Du Xiaofu. Blazing flames surged out of Du Xiaofu's spiritual stove talisman cauldron, turning into a sea of fire that burned the Buddha images in the sky. This was an astonishing battle that shocked everyone. But in the end, everyone saw that the arrogant kid had actually used a secret technique, which transformed into a storm-like soul attack that affected Hung Rushi. Afterwards, he used a spiritual stove and a talisman cauldron to heavily injure her. Hung Rushi was defeated and fell off the martial-proof platform. Du Xiaofu was drenched in blood. His clothes were stained with blood, and his face was pale. It seemed that he really didn't have the strength to fight anymore. Hold on, you Bufon, Mu Yumming, and the others clenched their fists as if they were the ones fighting. The 4th Taoist, Guanlianin, stepped onto the stage. He was a man with a heavenly bearing and divine martial prowess. His attacks were accompanied by wind and thunder, and it was as if he grasped the universe in his hands. He suppressed Du Xiaofu with all his strength. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu's body swayed and his eyes narrowed slightly. Suddenly, a white divine light surged in his eyes and a thick aura spread out. At the same time, Du Xiaofu made a hand seal, and a golden long saber suddenly condensed in his right hand. Chi 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 chi. The body of the saber flowed with mysterious light and runes, and a fierce aura spread out from the saber, causing the surrounding space to ripple violently. Saber Soul Technique, Saber Soul Slash. Du Xiaofu shouted, and the saber light in his hand instantly streaked across the void, leaving behind afterimages. The surrounding air was squeezed out with a sharp sound as it constantly cut through the void. Every slash of the saber would cause the space to tremble, and it was even more terrifying to the soul. This was a Saber Soul technique. Du Xiaofu had obtained it from his master, Spiritual Sovereign Sacred Hand's Heavenly Spirit Record. It was a little different from the soul attacks of this world, but it was a technique to attack the soul. Du Xiaofu had studied it, and in the end, he really did succeed. This Saber Soul technique used Xin Qi and soul power to condense into a saber. Its attack was overbearing and varied. If it was cultivated to the end, there was nothing it couldn't pierce, nothing it couldn't break, and it could even shatter the opponent's soul through the void. It was absolutely overbearing. The terrifying saber shadow seemed to specialize in suppressing the soul. It faintly carried lightning and thunder, and it spread out a terrifying aura that made the experts around tremble. What a terrifying primordial spirit attack. That brat's methods are truly endless. The terrifying saber light caused exclamations to come from the square below the martial-proof platform. The people present were not ordinary people, and they could feel the terror of the saber light. Not only could it cut through the body, but it could also cut through the soul. Guanlianin was defeated. He was defeated by the soul attack, which made people sigh in admiration and pity. Everyone had a feeling that Guan Lianin was just a little bit away from defeating that arrogant kid. The fifth person, Meng Wui of the Confucian school, went up. As soon as Meng Wui attacked, the space distorted. Runes shrouded him, and a blazing aura rose up. Blazing and overbearing coexisted, and it emitted a supreme pressure that destroyed the surroundings. It was able to shatter the space and make people tremble in fear. Saber Soul Technique, Saber Soul Light Blade. Du Xiaofu found an opportunity amidst the wobbling. He let out a low roar and condensed a blade light in his hand. Then, he waved his hand upward, as if drawing a beautiful crescent moon arc in front of him, turning into a crescent moon golden blade that cut through the void. This saber attack was very beautiful. The saber light brought along a moving afterimage. It was like a meteor dragging a long tail of light across the void, and then it fiercely slashed towards Meng Wui. When this saber light appeared, Meng Wui didn't know what he felt. His face turned pale, and his eyes froze. The moving waning moon golden saber easily cut through Meng Wuyi's defense. The runes shattered, and a terrifying energy fluctuation erupted. Whoosh whoosh. An incomparably sharp force spread out, causing the surrounding space to explode. Thud thud. Meng Wui's body staggered back until he fell off the martial-proof platform. On his pale face, there was a shallow blood mark between his eyebrows. Meng Wui's eyebrows were almost cut off. That arrogant kid won again. Everyone in the corner of the square held their breaths. The sixth one, Li Chuya of Legalism, went on stage. You'll pay the price. Li Chuya attacked aggressively. He was fierce and overbearing, and the wind and clouds surged. The surrounding sky turned dark, and one couldn't even see their own fingers. Li Chuya also used a magic weapon. Blazing light streaked across the void like lightning, and attacks like silver pythons tore through the void. In the pitch-black space, he was the only one shining brightly. It was like a miracle. Li Chuya was only one step away from the domain realm. If he encountered a domain realm expert from the outside world, he would definitely dare to fight head-on. Saber Soul Technique, Saber Soul Void Elemental Annihilation. Du Xiaofu didn't retreat this time. He directly fought back. A golden saber condensed in his hand again, and it turned into a golden light blade that filled the sky. This saber was more terrifying than the previous one. The terrifying golden saber light was like a golden rainstorm. The light blade broke through the air, accompanied by countless saber lights that rushed into the sky. It illuminated the pitch-black space like a sun rising from the east. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Every golden saber light seemed to have the power to pierce through space. When they gathered together, they enveloped the entire space. Their power was already terrifying to the extreme. The whistling golden blades of light filled the sky, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. With the speed of lightning and overbearing might, they enveloped Li Chuya. This terrifying saber light was overbearing and powerful, but the most terrifying thing was that it was mixed with a primordial spirit attack, and it was filled with electric arcs. Just the energy that leaked out could directly pierce through the void. Is this a primordial spirit attack or a martial technique? This method is too terrifying. It can restrain a primordial spirit. Under that terrifying saber light, the people around the square cried out in alarm. Whoosh! On the martial-proof platform, in this kind of collision, the large space was directly distorted by the frightening collision of energy. Then, on the martial-proof platform, Li Chuya's attack was destroyed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The defense on his body was cut through by the dense and strange golden light blade. Pff! Blood spurted out. In the next moment, Li Chuya's body was dripping with blood. A bloody mark appeared between his eyebrows, and one of his arms was cut off. Bang! Du Xiaofu kicked his body off the martial-proof platform. Li Chuya had just activated a ritual implement, but Du Xiaofu directly sealed its primordial spirit connection. In the end, he unceremoniously put it into his pouch of cosmos. The sixth person, Li Chuya, was still defeated. Everyone's expression was solemn and dull. Those from the 9 great clans changed their expressions, and those from the legalism looked even more gloomy and ugly. Next, the surrounding light recovered. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu stood proudly. His battle robes were stained with blood, and his aura seemed withered. Emoli of the Emo family took the stage. His aura was neither strong nor domineering, and he seemed very calm. The runes on his body flickered, but a thick and continuous aura emanated from him. You seem to have expended a lot of energy. You go first. Emoli stood on the martial-proof platform, calm and unruffled. His eyes were deep, and he had a transcendent aura. Like a boulder, he made people feel an invisible and terrifying pressure. The Emo family was Sima Muhan's maternal family, and Du Xiaofu had also met Emoli on the Tianhuang continent. However, Du Xiaofu did not stand on ceremony and made the first move. In the end, despite the seemingly incomparably dangerous situation, Emoli was defeated and Du Xiaofu was victorious. Given Du Xiaofu's current cultivation and strength, no one present would be able to see through him even if he were to hide in the dark. The eighth person was Zhou Wanan of the Yinyang school. In the end, amidst a wave of exclamations of surprise, Zhou Wanan was just about to win when Du Xiaofu turned the tables in an unbelievable manner. Du Xiaofu defeated Zhou Wanan with a soul formation attack, causing Zhou Wanan to be unable to recover from his shock for a long time. Last one. Du Xiaofu's body was dripping with blood. Standing on the martial-proof platform, he was already on the verge of collapse, but he still held his head high and his chest out, looking very arrogant. Is this guy really going to sweep through the 9 great families? Everyone in the square exclaimed. 8 families had already been defeated. If the last one was defeated, then the 9 great families would all be defeated today. The last person was Zhou Yu of the School of Agriculture. Under the gazes of the entire square, Zhou Yu suddenly felt a great pressure. Boom! The last battle was thrilling from the beginning. Zhou Yu's attacks were steady from the beginning, and his essence, qi, and spirit were like rainbows. He was not conceited, but he had a powerful aura. Du Xiaofu vomited blood again and again. He had been suppressed without any strength to fight back. That kid is an arrow at the end of its flight. He is finally going to be defeated. After winning more than 10 battles in a row, that kid can't hold on any longer. Everyone in the square was discussing. Everyone felt that the arrogant kid was finally unable to hold on and was about to be defeated. Especially the disciples of the School of Agriculture were very happy. If Zhou Yu could win, although he would gain a lot of advantages, it was still equivalent to suppressing the faces of the other 8 families. This would allow the School of Agriculture to take the lead among the 9 great families. However, at this moment, everyone no longer had their original disdain and contempt for the arrogant kid. Instead, they were secretly shocked. A young man who could win more than 10 battles in a row and defeat the top young generation of the 8 great families, who would dare to look down on him? Roar! However, just when Zhou Yu was about to win, the situation on the martial-proof platform suddenly changed. A terrible soul storm swept out, and a large amount of beast energy roared out. Du Xiaofu was like a dead tree that suddenly exuded vitality. His aura once again rose to the peak and was even stronger than before. Not good. That kid used a secret method to forcibly recover and even increase his cultivation for a short time. The crowd suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Bang, bang. However, everything happened too fast. Zhou Yu was injured and directly flew out of the martial-proof platform. He vomited blood, but it seemed that his injury was not too serious. Below the martial-proof platform, Zhou Yu seemed to feel that the opponent did not use any killing moves, otherwise, his injury would have been even more serious. I lost. Zhou Yu was helpless. His expression was somewhat lonely and bitter. He was a dignified School of Agriculture and was not weak among his peers. However, he did not expect that he would be defeated in the hands of a talisman master from the outside world. Moreover, he was defeated in such an embarrassing and helpless manner. The whole square was silent. Everyone was stunned. The people of the 9 great families were silent, and their expressions were complicated. At this point, the people of the 9 great families had all been defeated. Under the continuous battle of attrition, the representatives of the 9 great families were defeated in front of a peer from the outside world. This is a disgrace. The young men and women of the 9 great families gritted their teeth and were filled with hatred. Whether they admitted it or not, this was definitely a disgrace to the 9 great families. I am invincible. I am the god of war. All the treasures are mine. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu's clothes were stained with blood, and the corner of his mouth was bleeding. However, he did not care. His eyes were full of the treasures on the martial-proof platform. Chapter 1539. That guy is so hateful. Hurry up and tell the experts to come and deal with him. He's too hateful. He's a disgrace to the 9 great families. The young generation of the various clans looked at Du Xiaofu on the martial-proof stage, and all of them gnashed their teeth in hatred. Who is that kid? Is he from the Yao realm or the Beast realm? That kid is extraordinary. Quite a few experts and elders from the legalism school had gathered in the distance. They looked at the martial-proof stage from afar and secretly asked questions. Their eyes were filled with shock. I heard that kid calls himself the war god. Yesterday, he defeated Qinjia in one move in Sky City. Someone spoke of Du Xiaofu's origins. Many people from the school of legalism learned that he had been able to defeat Qinjia in a single blow in Sky City. After all, he represented a good seedling. Perhaps he would be of great use in the future, so the legalism school attached some importance to him. Ha 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 ha, as expected of the 9 great families. Little brother is worthy of being called the war god. Loud laughter rang out. Among the crowd of onlookers, there was a group of ferocious auras. Laughing loudly, a young man walked out. His tone wasn't polite to the people from the 9 great families. It's him, Bian. It's said that he's from the Yazi branch of the dragons. He's the strongest of the younger generation. This time, he's one of the leaders of the dragons. He can suppress a descendant of a true dragon. As the young man appeared, someone spoke of his origins. He was an extraordinary member of the dragons, so even the 9 great families didn't dare to be polite to him. Du Xiaofu looked at the young man. He could sense the young man's aura. He could also hear the people around him talking about him. This person was from the dragons. Du Xiaofu glanced at the young man and said, I've always been the war god. I've always been invincible. Don't tell me you want to challenge me, but I'm tired today. Let's fight another day. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed. He looked like he was about to put away his treasures and leave. The young man from the dragons, Bian's eyes flickered. He smiled and waved his hand. A beam of light shot out and turned into a resplendent radiance on the martial-proof stage. Eoh! Light flowed and multicolored light flickered. Along with the resplendent symbols, it poured down like a waterfall from the sky above the martial-proof platform. It was accompanied by the roar of a dragon that resounded in all directions. In the end, the resplendent light gradually revealed a full set of battle armor. It was dazzling with golden light, divine and extraordinary, and its might could suppress the heaven and earth. That set of armor seemed to contain the supreme Tao within it, causing one's soul to tremble just by looking at it. Oh! The armor let out a dragon's roar, and a giant golden dragon's shadow appeared. It was as if a real golden dragon had come into being, and the dragon's might was vast and mighty, covering the sky. In the end, the massive golden dragon projection spanned across the entire plaza, causing winds and clouds to surge in all directions as lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. This was just a shadow on the armor, but it had already caused such a phenomenon. What was even more shocking was that there seemed to be an indestructible dragon's might on the battle armor, making people feel as if they were facing an ancient true dragon. Under the frightening pressure, the bodies of the surrounding people trembled. Some even directly fell to the ground, unable to resist the frightening pressure. Some of the martial honors and 8-star spiritual talisman masters in the plaza also found it difficult to withstand the pressure. Their faces turned pale, and their bodies trembled. In particular, the sovereign beasts were even more unable to withstand the pressure and almost knelt down. It was only when the golden dragon's shadow on the battle armor disappeared that the pressure weakened significantly. Heavens, that's the coiling dragon battle god armor, the treasure of the Yazi clan of dragons. It was actually given to Tao Wu. Some of the old men and experts from the school of legalism immediately recognized the origins of the armor and could not help but cry out in surprise. That's a good battle armor. It's a great treasure. Du Xiaofu's eyes lit up as he stared fixedly at the battle armor floating in the air. He did not hide the passion in his eyes. Feeling the aura of the battle armor, Du Xiaofu was truly frightened at this moment. Little brother, this is the treasure of my clan, called the Coiling Dragon Battle God Armor. It's a match made in heaven with your name of War God. It was refined from 1,080,000 dragon scales shed by the ancestors of the Golden Dragon bloodline of my clan. Those ancestors specially refined it for the sake of protecting my clan. Dragon scales were used as clothes and dragon tendons were used as threads. Finally, this battle armor was refined into a peak high-grade magic weapon. It's rumored that it has a chance of becoming a sacred weapon. When the armor was mentioned, Bayan also became proud. It was a great treasure of the Yazi lineage. As the most outstanding representative of the younger generation, he only had the right to bring it out this time so that he could shine brilliantly in the school of legalism and suppress his peers. This Coiling Dragon Battle God armor is really good. It has the name of War God and is a match made in heaven with me. Do you want to give it to me? On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu looked at Tao Wu without hiding his gaze. He looked as if he had seen a treasure and was about to drool. Well, haha. Tao Wu looked at Du Xiaofu with a faint smile on his face. He said, "This Coiling Dragon Battle God armor is also a treasure of my clan. I can't just give it away casually. However, little brother, you fought against the 9 great clans and won consecutively. Such strength and courage has made me admire you. I'm itching to exchange pointers with you. As long as I exchange pointers with you, you can give me this Coiling Dragon Battle God armor." No problem. Du Xiaofu hurriedly nodded. His eyes were fixed on the dazzling runes wrapped around the Coiling Dragon Battle God armor that was emitting a dragon's aura. This, Tao Wu was stunned. He looked at Du Xiaofu with a trace of disdain in his eyes. However, he didn't leave any trace and quietly calmed down. Then, Bayan said to Du Xiaofu with a smile, "It's only interesting to add some stakes to this competition. If I lose, this Coiling Dragon War God armor will be yours. I believe that you will be able to make this Coiling Dragon War God armor shine brilliantly in the future. However, if I'm lucky enough to win, the pile of treasures that you just won will also be mine. I believe that this Coiling Dragon War God armor of mine is much better than those scrap metals." When they heard Tao Wu's words, Su Hao Hui, Gong Sun Xiong, and the others' expressions darkened. He actually called their mid-grade magic artifact scrap metals. He was clearly insulting them. However, when they looked at the Coiling Dragon Battle God armor, Su Hao Hui and the others were speechless. The mid-grade magic artifacts they'd taken out were things they'd never used on their bodies. Although they were genuine mid-grade magic artifacts, they weren't the peak of mid-grade magic artifacts. Naturally, they couldn't compare to the treasures of the Dragon's Yazi clan. The pile of treasures they'd taken out was enough to shake Kyushu and cause the patriarchs of the various factions in the outside world to fight over it. However, they still couldn't compare to the Coiling Dragon Battle God armor. That Tao Wu is shameless. He's clearly trying to lure that brat into a fight and win the treasures. Rumor has it that Tao Wu has already ascended to the Beast region. He's really shameless to interfere now. That brat is probably really exhausted. After fighting over a dozen battles in a row, even a true god of war would collapse. That brat must have used some secret technique. I'm afraid he won't be able to last much longer. Tao Wu deliberately took out the Coiling Dragon Battle God armor. He knows that Brat has his eyes on the treasure, so he's willing to pay a high price to entice him into a fight. The spectators from the various families and factions discussed among themselves. No one present was a fool. They could all see that Tao Wu's intentions were sinister and treacherous. If Tao Wu really defeats that brat, I'm afraid the dragons will wantonly proclaim that the dragons suppressed us 9 families. The surrounding discussions caused Tao Wu's expression to gradually darken. He suddenly said, "Can you people from the 9 families be a little quieter? What's the point of chattering when you've already lost? Don't tell me you only know how to talk when you can't beat others? Noisy." What a Tao Wu! That bastard! When the surrounding crowd heard this, their expressions turned ugly and displeased. However, the discussion really did die down. Despite the displeased expressions of the 9 families, Tao Wu didn't care. The 9 families were powerful, but the dragons didn't care about them. Tao Wu's smile remained. He looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Little brother, have you made up your mind? I can accompany you in a fight, but you have to first attain the coiling dragon battle god armor on the proof platform." Du Xiaofu seemed to be in a dilemma. In the end, he gritted his teeth and nodded, afraid that Tao Wu would go back on his word. Chapter 1540. Fu Cheng seemed to be pondering and hesitating, but in the end, when he saw Du Xiaofu's expression as if he had seen a treasure, he secretly felt disdain. He waved his hand, and the coiling dragon war god armor landed on the martial-proof platform. He nodded and said, "Okay, I promise you." "Very well." Du Xiaofu smiled, formed a hand seal, and directly set up a seal on the coiling dragon war god armor. "Then let's fight. I'm looking forward to it." Bian laughed. The smile on his face had already started to change. Bufan soared through the air and directly landed on the stage. He stared at Du Xiaofu and said, "The so-called battle gods are merely the battle gods of the 9 great clans. In front of me, there's no way you can claim to be a battle god." Bian is baring his fangs. Nobody was surprised by the sudden change in Bian's attitude. They had already guessed it in their hearts. They just sighed and lamented that this time, that arrogant brat was defeated by Bian. Henceforth, the 9 great families would be humiliated in front of dragons. "Oh my God, can't you just bear with it? That's an expert from the Dragon Clan." Mu Yumming, Yu Bufan and the others were helpless again. That guy had already won more than 10 battles in a row and defeated the outstanding peers of the 9 great families. But in the end, he still wasn't satisfied. Du Xiaofu didn't seem to be surprised by the sudden change in Bian's attitude. He looked at Bian with an innocent and brilliant expression and said with a smile, "I forgot to tell you that I have never taken dragons seriously. Pure-blooded dragons are all the same, not to mention that you are just a mixed blood dragon." "Say that again." The smile on Xuan Xiu's face suddenly changed as he looked down at Du Xiaofu. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as his eyes shot out a cold light. "Am I wrong? Aren't you a pure-blooded dragon? Aren't you a mixed blood dragon?" Du Xiaofu looked at Tao Wu with an innocent face and said seriously, "I've never taken the Dragon Clan seriously. I really don't want to lie to you, but I don't have a mount with me recently. Why don't I suffer a little and let you reluctantly become my mount? What do you think?" "Fuck, this kid is too arrogant." The spectators from the 9 great families and major forces were stunned by Huang Xiaolong's words. However, for the people of the 9 great families, seeing Bai and being ignored and even humiliated like this, they were secretly pleased. "Master, you're really audacious." Mu Yumming and Yu Bufan had completely collapsed. That guy actually opened his mouth and asked Tao Wu to be his mount. How arrogant was that? Mu Yumming and Yu Bufan felt their bodies trembling involuntarily. In the end, they supported each other. "Ha ha ha ha." Bian's face darkened for a moment before he suddenly laughed wildly. His voice shook the clouds, but everyone could hear that his laughter was mixed with unparalleled fury. As his laughter rippled out, a terrifying beast region aura burst out from Bian's body. Runes soared into the sky and shook the sky, faintly accompanied by the endless roar of a dragon. "Kid, you shouldn't have provoked me like this. You will pay an unforgettable price for this." Bian roared furiously. His handsome face began to turn sinister. His eyes were densely covered with a strange red glow, causing one's hair to stand on end. "Haven't you just ascended to the beast region? How dare a mixed blood dragon be so arrogant?" Du Xiaofu shot a glance at Bian, who was floating in the air, and curled his lips. His battle clothes fluttered in the terrifying aura storm, but his body was like a boulder, unmoving like a mountain. A smile still remained on his face. "Have you enjoyed your sharp tongue? A mere 8-star Nirvana symbol master. Destroying you will be as easy as crushing an ant for me." Bian cried out in a dark and cold voice. His aura surged as he looked down on Du Xiaofu. His hair stood on end as his entire body glowed. A dragon's might appeared as bright symbol vortexes appeared one after another on the surface of his body. They channeled the energy of the land and distorted the entire martial-proof platform. A frightening aura also pressed down on Du Xiaofu in an invisible manner. 8-star symbol master. Who told you that I am only an 8-star symbol master? Du Xiaofu shook his head in astonishment. As soon as he finished speaking, his originally pale face suddenly recovered its rosy color. His blood-stained battle suit was suddenly wrapped in a dazzling light that gushed out from his body. His entire temperament suddenly became completely different. Bang! More importantly, a series of hand seals had already formed at some unknown time in Du Xiaofu's hands. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When the last hand seal in Du Xiaofu's hand was formed, 36 formation flags were instantly formed. They shone brightly as mysterious runes swept out in all directions. 8-star symbol master? I am no longer one. As Du Xiaofu's faint words sounded, the formation flags broke through the air and soared into the sky. Bang! In an instant, before everyone could recover from their shock, a huge formation that was thousands of feet in size appeared in front of everyone's eyes and directly enveloped the entire martial-proof platform. The sky in this area was trembling. The frightening aura that spread out from the formation made the legalism experts and elders in the distance change their expressions. He is a 9-star symbol master. Baiyan's expression also changed abruptly. After being stunned for a moment, he quickly retreated. If he was trapped in the 9-star symbol array, Baiyan knew that even if he could forcefully break the formation, he would have to pay an absolute price. However, it was too late for Baiyan to retreat. The formation that covered the sky enveloped the void in all directions, including Baiyan, who was retreating at lightning speed. Rumble. At this moment, the entire heavens and the earth in the surroundings were trembling. Boundless rune energy lights twisted and condensed in the surroundings of the grand formation, sealing off an area of the void. It was suffused with a terrifying and fierce aura, accompanied by killing intent. This was no longer an ordinary formation, but a powerful killing formation. Ayo, ayo! Within the formation, a dragon's roar shook the sky. The light was so bright that it distorted the void and prevented people from peeking in. However, it was not difficult for people to know that Baiyan had activated the Yazi body at the first moment and wanted to break out of the formation. Ayo! At the same time. Although the formation covered the entire martial-proof platform, everyone could still see the coiling dragon war god armor that was sealed by Du Xiaofu at the edge of the martial-proof platform. It suddenly shone brightly and emitted a golden light like a sun in the sky. The dragon's roar resounded as a golden dragon shadow roared out from the coiling dragon war god armor, trying to break free from Du Xiaofu's seal. This is mine. Du Xiaofu appeared and formed a hand seal. There was a bright light between his eyebrows, and there seemed to be electric arcs surging out. It was so blurry that no one could see through it. In the end, no one knew whether Du Xiaofu had cut off or completely sealed the connection between the coiling dragon war god armor and Baiyan, but he kept it in his Chinkuan bag. After that, under the gazes of everyone, Du Xiaofu was refreshed and did not seem to be on the verge of death and exhausted at all. He put away the large pile of treasures on the martial-proof platform into his own Chinkuan bag in satisfaction. Only then did he flash out of the martial-proof platform in satisfaction, looking like he was about to leave. Boy, what did you do to my brother Baiyan in the coiling dragon war god armor? Hand over the coiling dragon war god armor. Boy, keep the formation, or you won't be able to leave. Suddenly, a dozen figures rushed out from the group of dragons. More than a dozen young men and women turned pale, and their eyes were fixed on Du Xiaofu. The coiling dragon war god armor was a treasure of the dragons and could not be lost. It was also a treasure of the entire dragons. Furthermore, the terrifying killing array made them feel that it would not be easy for Tao Wu to break out of the array by force. I won the coiling dragon war god armor. How dare a few mixed blood dragons be so arrogant in front of this war god? Get out of my way, Du Xiaofu said. Suddenly, his face turned gloomy and his aura became domineering. He slapped two palms across the void. Slap, slap. Before the two young dragons could react, palm prints appeared on their faces and their bodies were sent flying. Although the two dragon clan youths hadn't activated their true forms, their cultivation auras weren't much weaker than Zhou Yu. Gongsun Xiong, Li Chuya, and the others. Yet, they were sent flying. Gulp, gulp. Everyone around sucked in a breath of cold air and swallowed their saliva. At this moment, everyone was completely sure that this kid had been pretending to be a pig to eat tigers from the beginning. He lured everyone into a trap and won a large number of treasures. In the end, he even lured Bai and to take out the treasure of the dragons. Only then did he use his true strength. This kid was already a 9-star talisman master. At first, he pretended to be an 8-star origin talisman master. Later, he pretended to be an 8-star nirvana talisman master. He caused the 9 great families to be defeated today. More than a dozen people were robbed, and most importantly, the dignity of the 9 great families was completely humiliated. When the 2 dragon race youths were sent flying by the 2 slaps, the other dragon race youths who were surrounding Du Xiaofu immediately dispersed. None of them dared to block Du Xiaofu's path. Baiyan's defeat is certain. Today's the end. If you want to challenge this war god, you can continue tomorrow on the martial-proof platform. However, you must bring enough treasures. Without treasures, this war god will not accept any challenge. Du Xiaofu stretched his waist and felt refreshed. He was so arrogant that he was sure that Bai and could not break his talisman array. After more than a dozen battles, Du Xiaofu gave people the feeling that he was not exhausted at all. It was as if he had been playing house for the whole day. Finally, he shook his battle clothes, stood with his hands behind his back, and walked away. Gongsun Xiong, Li Chuya, Su Haohui, Heng Rushi, and the others turned pale. Looking at the departing figure, they felt that today they were like crickets in a jar. They had been played by that kid for the whole day. In the end, all the treasures on their bodies were taken away, and their face was greatly damaged. Bastard, that kid is too cunning, too sinister. That brat is sinister to the extreme. The 9 great families and the dragons were played. This is an absolute humiliation. Where did that bastard come from? He can't cheat people like this. Chapter 1541. Scammer. That bastard is a scammer. The 9 great clans and the dragons have all been scammed. The dragons are the ones who have been scammed. The treasures of the Yazi clan have all been scammed. However, that Bai and deserves it. He wanted to take advantage of the situation, but who would have thought that he would be scammed into a deep ditch? When the figure in battle armor left with his hands behind his back, the crowd around the martial-proof platform immediately cursed and hated him. Many people wished that they could gang up on that scammer. However, the legalism had already banned the use of words. All the verification could only be done on the martial-proof platform, and no one was allowed to deliberately kill. Private fights were prohibited in other places. That guy is a 9-star spirit talisman master. Mu Yumming and Yu Bufan finally regained their senses. They felt that their mood today was like a wave that had gone through 18 twists and turns. Their hearts were already somewhat unable to bear it. Let's go quickly. In the end, hearing the angry curses and hatred towards that kid, Yu Bufan and the others were afraid that they would also be implicated and immediately retreated. One must know that at the beginning, they came together with that guy who was known as the war god. Now that the crowd was agitated, it would be bad if something happened to them in the end. At this moment, the day was almost over and the sun was about to set. The martial-proof platform was still enveloped by a powerful talisman array. Baiyan was crazily roaring inside to break the array, but it was unable to do so. Finally, at dusk, the sun set in the west. Baiyan was still trapped on the martial-proof platform and had yet to break the array. Many young talisman masters of the various clans gradually surrounded the martial-proof platform to study the array. Later, they were all surprised to find that they could not study anything. The array was very strange, and in the end, it even alarmed some of the older generation talisman masters of the legalism to come over. It was said that late at night, a handsome young man descended on the martial-proof platform and looked at the array with an unsightly expression. Then, the handsome young man made his move. Divine might descended and dragon might surged. The might of a true dragon descended and forcibly destroyed the array on the martial-proof platform. The light illuminated the night, and the broken runes did not disappear for a long time. The next day, on the martial-proof platform, Dragon the Fifth would return the favor. That night, there seemed to be people from all the great clans within legalism that they would make certain people pay the price on the martial-proof platform tomorrow. However, Du Xiaofu did not care about these things. In the evening, after returning to the place where he settled down, Du Xiaofu went to his room. After setting up a seal enchantment, he began to regulate his breath. Walala! After a moment, Du Xiaofu's body was shrouded in a circle of white light and an ancient aura. Chi-chi. Deep in the night, Du Xiaofu suddenly opened his eyes. A bright light flashed in his eyes, and a slight smile appeared on his face before he regained his composure. Snooping, Du Xiaofu's sharp primordial spirit sensed that someone from legalism was spying on him, but he did not pay much attention to it. This was within his expectations. Xiaojing, will you appear on the martial-proof platform tomorrow? As he muttered, Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with anticipation. After causing such a huge commotion, it should be very lively outside. Du Xiaofu hoped that he could lure Xiaojing out tomorrow, even if it was from afar. He did not dare to expose himself, and he did not know the whereabouts of his mother and sister. Du Xiaofu could only use this method to cause a commotion. At least for now, there was no better way. After that, Du Xiaofu continued to regulate his breath. He did not know that at this moment, the entire legalism was quietly shaken. Everything that happened on the martial-proof platform during the day spread through the entire school of legalism extremely quickly. All of them were shocked by it. Investigate the background of that brat. Just what is his background? In a large hall in legalism, an old man said in a deep voice, "If he can be of use to us, this time we have brought in an extraordinary person. Even if we have to give him some benefits, we will not hesitate." An old man said with a smile, "The youngsters from the major clans probably won't be idle tomorrow. Even the youngsters from our school of legalism won't stay silent. It'll definitely be even more lively tomorrow. Should we interfere to prevent any problems from happening?" Someone asked. "No need to intervene. Let them fight. This will also allow us to understand the competitiveness of the big families. We can also see how strong that brat is. If that brat is really extraordinary, then our legalism will have profited this time." An old man on the seat of honor said, "We only need to observe from afar. It will be fine as long as no lives are lost. Tomorrow, the dragons and the big families will definitely go all out. I'm afraid that brat will end up in a miserable state. Should we protect that brat?" Someone continued to ask. "Just protect that brat's life at the last moment. At that time, we will be able to focus more." The old man on the seat of honor revealed a smile. That mysterious brat had already proved that he was extraordinary. If he could be of use to them, then he would definitely be a great help in the divine domain. The curtain of night shrouded, and the moonlight shone in the sky. On the towering mountain peak, a winding bluestone path spiraled. Ancient stone steps snaked upwards, leading straight to the summit. You have to tell me such a small thing? Although a person from the outside world is extraordinary, defeating Li Chuya and the others as a 9-star spirit talisman master is not a big deal. There have been peerless geniuses in the outside world before, but they were always a little lacking. It's just a firework. Blooming for a day doesn't mean anything. It's just a bit of claptrap. On the summit, a purple-haired young man stood with his hands behind his back. Enveloped by the moonlight, his light purple hair fluttered gently, dyeing the moonlight. He said, "But in the end, this is our legalism. Our dignity cannot be violated. Tomorrow, just find someone and make sure that he can't step onto the martial-proof stage on the third day." "I'm just a little surprised, so I came to inform you. Tomorrow, Dragon Fifth of the Dragon Clan, Hung Chi of the Buddhist School, Void Spirit of the Taoist School, and Chi Jiajun of the Yin-Yang School will be forced to make their moves early. That brat should be the first to be unable to resist. This is a little different from our plan." A young man wearing a brocade robe said beside the purple-haired young man. He had a handsome face and then said, "I've already checked. Du Xiaofu didn't come. After all, he doesn't have the guts. I've already said that he wouldn't dare to come. Some of the elders in the clan are planning to fight after the old lord's birthday celebration." "He actually didn't come," the purple-haired young man said indifferently. He seemed a little confused. Under the moonlight, his temperament was transcendent, like a god descending to the world. The night passed slowly. The first rays of dawn drove the curtain of night away. In the early morning, it was quiet everywhere. It was foggy, and from afar, it was faintly discernible, like a fairy dancing in the wind. Soft sunlight sprinkled on the forest, diffusing and covering the ancient hills. In the lush forest, sparkling dewdrops hung on the lush leaves. They swayed as if they were reluctant to part with them. The vast square around the marshal-proof platform in the early morning was crowded with people early in the morning. A large number of people gathered from all over the school of legalism. The news of what happened on the marshal-proof platform yesterday spread throughout the legalism like a storm overnight. It shocked the entire legalism. The Dragon V has said that he will fight personally today. The school of vertical and horizontal, the school of philosophers, the Confucian school, the Taoist school, and the other representatives have also said that they will take revenge today and pay back double. That kid calls himself the god of war. He's really sinister and treacherous. I heard that he won a lot of treasures and pills yesterday. Not only that, the dragon's treasure, the coiling dragon war god armor, which is close to the level of a sacred weapon, was also taken away by that guy. I heard that Feng Wu even asked for a fight. That kid is too deceitful. He pretends to be a pig to eat the tiger. He's extremely sinister and shameless. He must look extremely wretched. Don't worry, that kid will be in big trouble today. They won't let him go. That kid can be considered a weirdo. He can be remembered by the 9 great families and the dragons at the same time. Around the marshal-proof platform, the square was crowded with people early in the morning. All kinds of discussions and noises gathered and rushed into the sky. It was so lively that it was rarely seen in legalism. Who at this moment, in a remote courtyard outside legalism, Du Xiaofu slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air from his mouth. His whole body emitted light, and the aura in his body seemed to be rumbling. Ripples spread out from the surface of his body. His aura was very powerful, and it was filled with an ancient aura. Chi suddenly, Du Xiaofu opened his eyes. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes surged with silver-gold electric arcs. The light was resplendent, and he looked like a supreme youth sitting cross-legged. His aura shook the surrounding void, causing the space to rumble. However, this aura was only for a moment, and it was immediately restrained by Du Xiaofu. Then, Du Xiaofu's face revealed a smile. Recently, he had been practicing the mysterious incomplete cultivation method, which continuously increased the strength of his primordial spirit, gathering the energy of heaven and earth, and also nourishing his body. Both of them benefited. Under this kind of feeling, Du Xiaofu felt more and more that he was getting closer to the level of nirvana. However, Du Xiaofu was still very confused about the concept of nirvana. It was as if he was on the other side, but he couldn't reach out and touch it. It was close at hand, but it was also illusory. Crackle, he didn't think too much about it. It was a new day. Du Xiaofu's eyes surged with some anticipation and nervousness. He then got up and stretched his body. His bones and joints crackled, and then he opened the seal and walked out of the door. Lord God of War, you finally came out. Oh no, you're done for. You're in big trouble now. As soon as Du Xiaofu walked out of the door, Yu Bufan, Mu Yuming, and the rest, who had been waiting in the courtyard, couldn't help but be shocked. Then, their faces twitched, and they looked very nervous. What's wrong? Du Xiaofu asked, looking very relaxed. Lord, you're so relaxed. Do you know that Long Wu and the representatives of the various families have already said that they will definitely teach you a lesson today at the martial arts demonstration platform? When Mu Yuming saw Du Xiaofu's relaxed look, he couldn't help but roll his eyes at Du Xiaofu. Chapter 1542. They didn't sleep the whole night as they went everywhere to gather information. The more they gathered information, the more frightened they became. All the dragons and families had already said that they wouldn't be kind today. That's normal. I'll give them a chance to recoup their losses. I've always been a fair and just person. Du Xiaofu said seriously. You're fair and just? Yu Bufan and the others were helpless. That guy was shameless. Yesterday, he pretended to be a pig to eat the tiger. He was clearly a 9-star spirit talisman master, but he tricked the people of the 9 great families into offering their treasures. In the end, the dragons dug a huge pit, and even the treasures of the dragons were lost. How was that fair and just? It was just one pit after another that made the people of the 9 great families fall into it. Today's weather seems to be good. They should be waiting for me at this time. Du Xiaofu looked into the distance with a smile on his face. We've already asked around. The dragon's representative this time is Dragon 5th, the Yin-Yang School's representative is Qi Jiejun, the Buddhist School's representative is Heng Qi, the Taoist School's representative is Su Lingzi, the Confucian School's representative is Yan Lihan, the Mahaist School's representative is Mo Junyu, the School of Vertical and Horizontal's representative is Zhang Wanjiang, the School of Famous's representative is Hui Mutian, and the School of Farmers' representative is Jiang Yunfeng. These guys are all domain realm experts, and they're all terrifying existences. It's rumored that people of the same generation and level aren't their opponents. Mu Yuming said. The Yin-Yang School's Qi Jiejun. I wonder if he's related to Qi Shi. Du Xiaofu murmured. He thought of that holy and dignified woman he hadn't seen for a long time. We've also asked around. Legalism forbids private fights between great families and great forces. If you don't go to the martial-proof platform today, although you'll lose some face, they can't do anything to you. Yu Bufan said to Du Xiaofu embarrassedly. As long as he didn't go to the martial-proof platform today, nothing would happen. I have a feeling that there is a treasure calling out to me. Du Xiaofu smiled and flew away. Who the hell is this guy? Does he really want to cause trouble? Could it be that this fellow isn't even afraid of Dragon 5th and the others? Looking at Du Xiaofu's back, Mu Yuming and Yu Bufan felt helpless. They didn't know what else to say. Let's go and take a look. In the end, Mu Yuming and the others followed him to the martial-proof platform. On the martial-proof platform, the sun rose and there was already a sea of people around. Around the martial-proof platform, there were various formations. Every formation had close to 100 figures, and they were filled with an ancient aura. Among these figures, there were ferocious demonic beasts, but most of them were young human men and women. Their bodies were wrapped in a faint halo, and they were incomparably valiant and had an extraordinary temperament. In the lead of one of the groups, there was a peerlessly beautiful woman with a graceful figure. Her skin was soft like snow, her lips were like cherry blossoms, and her beauty was like limpid autumn waters. She was otherworldly and otherworldly. Interesting. A person from the outside world is indeed extraordinary, said the woman. Her jet-black hair was tied into a princess bun, and there was a rainbow-colored hairpin in the bun, with a few strands of tassels hanging down. She wore a pleated skirt, revealing a snow-white chest. There was a rainbow-colored belt around her waist, and her slender waist could only be held in one hand. Her temperament and beauty made the surrounding women feel ashamed of their inferiority, and they were overshadowed. If Du Xiaofu was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this graceful woman was an old acquaintance. She was Huang Ling, of the Phoenix clan, and he had interacted with her many times. That human should be extraordinary as well. Could it be that you're interested? A young man with an extraordinary temperament said to Huang Ling. His eyes were rippling with rainbow-colored light, and his body was emitting a blazing aura. Unfortunately, this is legalism. Legalism should have some arrangements. If he's really extraordinary, it would be good to bring him back to my clan if I have the chance. Huang Ling smiled faintly. She was untainted by dust, and there was an indescribable elegance and nobility about her. Not far away, there was a group of people. The person in front was a young man who was only 23 or 24 years old. His face was fair and handsome, and his temperament was refined. He was tall and straight, and he wore a starry battle robe, which made him look even more majestic. Looking at the group of people around him, the young man in battle robe said softly, "He calls himself the god of war. That guy is really arrogant. Jejun, that guy is too insidious. He's obviously a 9-star talisman master, and even Bayan can't do anything to him. However, he hid his cultivation and made us fight him. I hate him." Zhou Wunan was heartbroken. He, who finally found out the truth, had lost sleep last night. So what if he's a 9-star talisman master from the outside world? At most, He's just a 9-star talisman master. You're also a Nirvana Peak martial revered master. Isn't it embarrassing enough? The majestic young man rolled his eyes at Zhou Wunan and said, "Why do I have a cousin like you? I'm so angry." Zhou Wunan was so aggrieved that he couldn't say anything. The sun gradually rose, and the square around the martial-proof platform became more and more crowded. The noise of the gathering reached the sky. But today, everyone seemed to have a tacit understanding, and no one went up to the martial-proof platform. Everyone was waiting for the legendary god of war to appear. Even in the distance, there were many legalism masters and old people gathered. That guy still hasn't come. Don't tell me he doesn't dare to come. That guy must have heard the news. The great families and the dragons want to deal with him. Today, he still came to the martial-proof platform. Most likely, he doesn't dare to come. Don't tell me there's no fun to watch today. We waited in vain. Really disappointing. I wanted to see how extraordinary this guy is to be able to attract the attention of the 9 great families and the dragons. To be honest, I really like that guy's insidiousness and treachery. To be able to make the 9 great families and the dragons suffer, it can be considered unprecedented. I heard that when Bai An was rescued late last night, his appearance was miserable. The coiling dragon war god armor has also been lost. Bai An's heart must be bleeding right now. Amidst the uproar, within the dragon's formation, Bai An's pale face twitched. His heart was bleeding, and he was incomparably sullen. Yesterday, Bai An had originally thought that he would be able to take advantage of the situation. After all, he had just ascended to the beast realm and possessed the Yazi body of dragons. How could he have imagined that this fellow had actually been hiding his cultivation all this time to deal with the people of the 9 great clans? In the end, he had fallen head first into that huge pit and even lost the coiling dragon war god armor. In the end, Bai An finally understood why the kid had forcefully sealed his coiling dragon war god armor. That brat was too sinister. If he had the coiling dragon war god armor on him at the beginning, he would have been able to forcibly break out of the array. Unfortunately, the coiling dragon war god armor was tricked by that brat from the beginning. Tao felt that he should be considered very sinister, but compared to that guy, he was simply too weak. That guy was the real sinister one. That insidious guy definitely won't dare to come, otherwise, he wouldn't have made us, the 9 great families, and the major forces wait for him. If he dares to make the 9 great clans and the other factions wait for him, his ending will be even worse on the martial-proof stage. That guy is too cunning. He definitely won't dare to come. As time passed, the surroundings of the martial-proof platform gradually became restless. Haha, there are quite a lot of people today. Could it be that they are all waiting for me? Amidst the commotion, a voice came from the sky. Then, a tall figure appeared in the sky and flew over. His battle clothes fluttered as the tall figure landed on the martial-proof platform without hesitation. Whoosh whoosh. At this moment, everyone's attention was on him. That young man had a handsome face and an extremely elegant temperament. Is he the arrogant guy who is called the battle god? He's not vulgar at all. In fact, he's quite good-looking. There were women all around who spoke. It was rumored that this fellow was treacherous and sinister, his appearance wretched. However, that didn't seem to be the case. He was actually quite handsome. Rumble. It was also at this moment that many auras surged and shook the void. Many extraordinary people's eyes flashed like lightning and landed on the martial-proof platform. Du Xiaofu stood on the martial-proof platform. His battle clothes shook. He hadn't changed out of yesterday's battle clothes, and they were still stained with dried blood, giving him a ferocious look. Sweeping his gaze across the sea of people around him, Du Xiaofu saw many figures. There were many disciples of the 9 great clans that he had seen once in Tianhuang mainland. To Du Xiaofu's surprise, the figure of the boundless sect's 9-fold spirit appeared among the group of monks. That was where the disciples of the Buddhist sect were. Although the 9th spirit wasn't the leader, he was still very outstanding. Not far away, Huang Ling Er's figure appeared in Du Xiaofu's eyes, causing some fluctuations in the depths of Du Xiaofu's eyes. Looking around, Du Xiaofu released his mind, but he didn't see the person he wanted to see the most. She didn't come? Could it be that the commotion she caused wasn't enough? Du Xiaofu murmured softly in his heart. There was a hint of disappointment in his eyes as they began to dim. Hand over the coiling dragon war god armor and kowtow to me 3 times. Then, I can consider letting you go today. A handsome young man appeared in the air and looked at Du Xiaofu on the martial-proof platform. His eyes were filled with runes and dragon might as if the might of a true dragon had descended. He was the Dragon Fifth, a terrifying existence among dragons. Although he had cultivated for a long time, he was still a member of the younger generation in the world of demonic beasts. Get lost. If you want the coiling dragon war god armor, use treasures as a bet. Otherwise, I don't have time to fight with random people. It's a waste of time. Du Xiaofu's expression changed naturally as he looked straight at Dragon Fifth. With a wave of his hand, dragon might surged and dragon roars filled the air. A golden dragon phantom filled the sky, stirring up winds and clouds. Finally, it turned into a set of battle armor. This was the coiling dragon war god armor that Du Xiaofu won yesterday. At this moment, it was unknown whether Du Xiaofu had completely severed it or sealed its connection with Tao Wu. It floated on the martial-proof platform and shone in all directions. Chapter 1543. Today, you came for me. It's easy to challenge me. Take out a treasure of the same level as the coiling dragon war god armor. I can accept whatever heavenly treasures or heavenly treasures. If you win, take away the coiling dragon war god armor. If you lose, leave the treasure behind. Otherwise, I won't accept your challenge. Du Xiaofu said and looked around. He didn't put Dragon Fifth in his eyes at all. Dragon Fifth and the other members of the Dragon Clan felt their faces twitch and their gazes turn gloomy when they saw that fellow taking out the Dragon Clan's coiling dragon war god armor as a wager and even calling Dragon Fifth a nobody. This was a humiliation to the dragons. That guy clearly didn't put the dragons in his eyes. He's really arrogant. Everyone was surprised. He didn't put the dragons and the 9 great families in his eyes. Was that guy really a 9-star talisman master from the outside world? His arrogance was simply boundless. Kid, you're digging your own grave. I'll give you a chance. Dragon Fifth stood in the void. His body was covered by dragon runes. He looked like a real dragon in human form. He was incomparably terrifying. His aura was like a mountain flood, exuding a supreme aura. Everyone's eyes were filled with awe as they felt the aura coming from Dragon Fifth's body. Dragon Fifth's strength was indeed not in vain. Even the representatives of the major clans trembled when they looked at Dragon Fifth and felt the terrifying aura emanating from his body. Dragon Fifth was indeed powerful. Roar! Dragon Fifth summoned a treasure and directly flew to the martial-proof platform. It was a green light shield covered by layers of dragon scales. There were dragon shadows circling around it, covering the sky. Its power was spreading, causing the void to boil. Take away the heavenly dragon cover if you have the ability. You're not worthy of my challenge. I'm just giving you a chance. Dragon Fifth looked down at Du Xiaofu. His eyes were filled with strange runes. The light was dazzling, like a vortex that could devour one's primordial spirit. Dragon's treasure, the heavenly dragon cover. It's a great defensive treasure. It's not inferior to the coiling dragon war god armor. The dragons are indeed rich. Someone sighed in admiration and revealed the origins of the heavenly dragon cover. It was a great defensive treasure of the dragons. Du Xiaofu looked at the heavenly dragon cover not far away from him. The dragon's might was rolling, and it had the aura of a true dragon. It was indeed a treasure that was not inferior to the coiling dragon war god armor. I accept this sky dragon cover. Du Xiaofu didn't even raise his head, nor did he look at Dragon Fifth. Instead, he slowly scanned the surroundings of the martial-proof platform. His eyes glowed as he said, "Yesterday, did anyone from the 9 great families want to challenge me? If this dragon defeats me, then the coiling dragon war god armor will be his. Your 9 great families' face will also be suppressed by this dragon. Is this guy not afraid of the itch now that he has so many lice? My mother, uncle, grandpa, we shouldn't have hung out with that guy. We're in big trouble now." Mu Yuming, Yu Bufan, and the others who were rushing to the martial-proof platform Just happened to see that guy provoking the 9 great families on the Marshall-proof platform. Du Xiaofu's voice spread out. He was provoking the 9 great families by deliberately using the name of the dragons to provoke them. Everyone trembled, and the faces of the 9 great families' disciples turned gloomy, especially the disciples of the 9 great families who were sullen yesterday. Buzz. The sound of wind and thunder resounded, shaking the clouds and causing the void to tremble. A dazzling war spear appeared on the Marshall-proof platform. It was incomparably majestic, flowing with multicolored light, and its pressure spread across the void. Savage War Spear. Zhang Wanjing of the House of Vertical and Horizontal gives you a chance. A young man from the House of Vertical and Horizontal leaped into the air. His whole body was wrapped in a brilliant light, and the terrifying aura on his body seemed to be able to move mountains and overturn seas. A whoop, a dragon's roar, and a bird's cry resounded. A dazzling whip wrapped in the shadow of a dragon and a phoenix covered the sky. The sound shook the void, and its power made people tremble in fear. Dragon Shadow and Phoenix Whip. Master Huimutyin gives you a chance. A tall and slender young man stepped out from the House of Famous Families. Symbols overflowed, and the energy of heaven and earth gathered around his body. Buzz. The sound of Sanskrit resounded, and light soared into the sky. It seemed to be accompanied by the flash of gods and Buddhas. A fist-sized Buddhist bead appeared on the Marshall-proof platform. It seemed to be able to purify all evil and evil, making people feel relaxed and happy. Amitabha, Buddha Shadow Bead. Buddhist Hung Chi. A young monk walked into the void. He wore a plain robe, and there were 9 shining rings on his head. His voice was not loud, but it was like a tsunami, shaking people's souls. Boom! A dazzling bracelet appeared on the Marshall-proof platform, spanning across the void. 1 black and 1 white, 2 resplendent colors were released alternately, and the aura it released was not inferior to that of the Buddha Shadow Bead. Evil Warding Yin Yang Chain. Taoist Void Spirit. Today I will restore the name of Taoism. A young man walked out from the Taoist formation. He wore a slightly tight Taoist robe that revealed his perfect figure, but it could not hide his outstanding and heroic appearance. He was born with the aura of a king that ruled the world. Buzz. The treasured sword broke through the void, descending onto the Marshall-proof platform, causing the void to tremble. Mystic Light Void Sword. Scholarly School's Yin Lihen. A young man descended from the sky. His incomparably handsome features seemed to have been carved out. The lines on his face were sharp and clear, and his gaze was deep and sharp, giving people a boundless sense of terror and oppression. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled as a palm-sized mountain descended onto the Marshall-proof platform. It was wrapped in runes, but it emitted a majestic aura. The palm-sized mountain was surrounded by multicolored light, but it was able to suppress all directions. Taihang Mountain, School of Moism's Imo Junyu. A delicate voice rang out. It was a girl who was about 28 years old. She was tall and slender, and her figure was voluptuous. Her words and actions were elegant, and her black hair was like ink. Her skin was like jade, and her beautiful eyes revealed an indescribable charm. Buzz. A long spear swept through the sky, like a dragon soaring and a tiger leaping. It flowed with brilliant colors, and its entire body was filled with starlight and mysterious runes. Its power made people shudder. Limitless Brilliant Starlight Spear. School of Yin Yang's Chijiajun. A young man in a divine battle robe walked out. Starlight fluctuated, and he was extraordinary. Hong Long Glong. Not far from the limitless brilliant spear, a spike of light quietly appeared. Suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and thunder exploded. Lightning Spike. Jiang Yunfeng of the farmer's family. A young man stepped out again. He was very handsome, and his eyes were clear. His skin was fair. The temperament this young man emitted was very complex. It was simple, arrogant, overbearing, and powerful. It was like a mixture of all kinds of temperaments, but in the end, it revealed his own unique elegance and elegance. In a flash, 9 treasures appeared one after another. Adding on the coiling dragon war god armor that Du Xiaofu took out, 10 treasures appeared on the Marshall-proof platform. Hong long glong. The entire heaven and earth boiled, and everyone shivered. The dazzling runes on the martial-proof platform rushed into the heavens, and its power made everyone's hearts tremble. Too terrifying. It's difficult to resist that kind of pressure. Those with lower cultivation levels began to go limp, and they wanted to kneel down. That kind of pressure was too powerful. Almost all the people present were extraordinary, and most of them were from the 9 great families. Their eyesight and experience were extraordinary, but at this moment, looking at the 10 treasures on the martial-proof platform, their eyes blazed, and their hearts trembled. Heavenly Dragon Cover, Barbarian War Spear, Dragon Shadow Phoenix Whip, Thunder Spike, Taihang Mountain, Mysterious Radiance Void Sword, Buddha Shadow Pearl, Evil Warding Yin Yang Chain, Limitless Brilliant Spear. These are all legendary treasures of the great families, and this time, they were brought out by them. It's very simple. I'm afraid that this time, they brought these treasures to the martial-proof platform and to fight against the experts of the great families. But now, they took out their treasures in advance and were forced by that arrogant kid to regain their dignity and prove their families' names. The onlookers trembled and exclaimed. In the distance, the legalism elders and elders' eyes lit up. These treasures had left their illustrious names in the history of the great families. Du Xiaofu was also very satisfied, and his eyes looked at the treasures on the martial-proof platform, and at this moment, he was somewhat frightened. The 9 amazing ritual implements were no weaker than the coiling dragon war god armor. In fact, they were all close to the level of divine implements. Old rules, I accept all your challenges, Du Xiaofu said, and set up a seal, sealing all the treasures on the martial-proof platform. Dragon Fifth, Hui Mutian, Zhang Wanzheng, and the others' eyes twitched, but their transcendent aura was not affected. It's him. He seems to be somewhat similar to that guy's style. Huang Ling looked at Du Xiaofu from afar, and her heart trembled. She thought of a person, but then she smiled faintly and murmured, "Unfortunately, that guy is more ferocious and not as cunning as this guy." In the crowd, there was a group of people who seemed to be out of place, and there were only a few young men and women. The girl in the front was beautiful, but she was shy, and her smile was like a flower. She looked at the young man on the martial-proof platform from afar and murmured, "Interesting human. Kid, your appetite is too big, and you'll die from overeating." Outside the martial-proof platform, Zhang Wanzheng said with disdain. He looked straight at Du Xiaofu, and his eyes shone brightly. His aura shook the void. "With just you guys, I'll die from overeating." Du Xiaofu smiled faintly and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the 8 men and 1 woman hovering in the air outside the martial-proof platform. His gaze swept across them as he said, "I am a very fair person. If all of you want to challenge me, then let's continue with the order from yesterday. The school of vertical and horizontal can be the first. However, I suggest that all of you come at me together." Arrogant, too arrogant. He doesn't even put the representatives of the 9 great families in his eyes, and wants to deal with the 9 great families and the dragons. How arrogant. We must ruthlessly trample on that kid. Only then can we wash away the shame of the 9 great families. Everyone was indignant. Those who were present were all legalism people, and the rest were extraordinary people from the various families and major powers. Naturally, they hated Du Xiaofu to the core. That kid is digging his own grave. He's courting death. Su Haohui, Gong Sun Xiong, and the others who had been defeated by Du Xiaofu the day before were secretly cursing, and their eyes were filled with coldness. Crazy. That guy is completely crazy. Mu Yumming, Yu Bufan, and the others had completely collapsed. That guy was so arrogant that he wanted the 9 great clans and Dragon Fifth to attack together. This kind of arrogance was completely incurable. It had reached the point where no one could surpass it. Chapter 1544. This brat is mine. I will make him regret this for the rest of his life. There's no need for you to interfere. Zhang Wanzheng's gaze swept over Dragon Fifth, Hui Mutian, and the others. He stomped his foot on the void and directly stepped onto the stage. Boom! The entire stage trembled. Zhang Wanzheng's body was shrouded in mist and runes flickered, exuding a mysterious and terrifying aura. He looked straight at Du Xiaofu and said, "Do you think you have the qualifications to be challenged by me? You may have some skills in the outside world, but in front of me, in front of my house of Zongheng, you're nothing but a flea. You won't be able to jump up again." Du Xiaofu remained standing with his hands behind his back. He raised his head slightly and a cold smile appeared on his face as he said to Zhang Wanzheng, "You should be considered a genius of the house of Zongheng, but unfortunately, in front of me, you're nothing. If killing is allowed on this stage, I'll crush you like an ant." Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Zhang Wanzheng's eyes suddenly burst with a resplendent light. Blazing runes shot out from his eyes like a boiling sea of fire. His killing intent soared to the sky as he shouted, "My house of Zongheng's name has shaken the world since the ancient times. We've been unhindered under the heavens since then. The entire human race has been blessed by my house of Zongheng." "What? You want to compete with your ancestors? I don't know what the other geniuses of the 9 great families are like, but if they're all like you, I won't put them in my eyes." Du Xiaofu looked at Zhang Wanzheng with disdain. He was even more arrogant than Zhang Wanzheng, as if he was deliberately provoking Zhang Wanzheng. Du Xiaofu didn't have a good impression of the 9 great families who viewed themselves as superior. Du Xiaofu wasn't targeting the 9 great families, but facing arrogant people, he would be even more arrogant. This was his personality, and it was difficult to change it. In this world where the strong were respected, the weak were prey to the strong. Strength was the law of the jungle. "You're too arrogant. You're courting death." Zhang Wanzheng's eyes flashed with a cold light. Blazing runes ignited on his body, so hot that they could burn the void. The blazing flames suddenly surged as he slammed his palm towards Du Xiaofu. He knew that Du Xiaofu was an array talisman master, and the array he had set up yesterday was very strong. He didn't want to give that guy a chance. He wanted to directly suppress him with one move and bring about a greater deterrence. Roar! Zhang Wanzheng's palm slammed out, and a sea of flames descended. Blazing flame runes rushed out like a tide, and in the end, they turned into a roaring fire tiger. The fire tiger pounced on its prey, seemingly distorting the space around it. It brought with it a terrifying might that could crush everything as it descended. He has just reached the peak of the martial domain realm. I'm afraid he is only a step away from the sealed region. That's the power of fire from the school of vertical and horizontal. Zhang Wanzheng's cultivation of it is extraordinary. Among his peers in the school of vertical and horizontal, it is said that he is at least in the top 5. Following Zhang Wanzheng's attack, the surrounding people immediately exclaimed at the terrifying aura. However, at this moment, Zhang Wanzheng, who was on the martial-proof platform, felt that something was amiss. His tiger palm had actually directly pounced on his opponent's body, destroying the space around it. However, it did not destroy the former. On the contrary, the arrogant guy's figure was like lightning, not retreating but advancing instead. He leaped into the air and appeared in front of Zhang Wanzheng. At the same time, a terrifying yuan spirit storm swept through the void. It even brought about lightning and thunder, and silver-gold lightning arcs pierced through the void. The strength of the yuan spirit was beyond Zhang Wanzheng's imagination. In an instant, Zhang Wanzheng felt as if his yuan spirit was facing a supreme being. It began to tremble and become dizzy. His opponent's eyes were like black holes that wanted to devour his yuan spirit. At this moment, Du Xiaofu did not hold back. Unlike yesterday, he needed to make a big move to draw out the person he wanted to meet. Otherwise, this legalism trip would be in vain. At this moment, facing the 9 great clans, Du Xiaofu was also a young man. After all, the bones in his body were still young, and the blood of youth was easily boiling. He also wanted to know how strong these top experts of the younger generation were. Du Xiaofu did not use any martial arts skills. He only used the skills of a spirit talisman master. However, at this moment, Du Xiaofu also used the power of his yuan spirit, which was the fusion of 3 spirit thunders and spiritual roots. Du Xiaofu rarely used this kind of yuan spirit power. After the fusion of 3 spirit thunders and spiritual roots, it was difficult for others to recognize him. At this moment, Du Xiaofu burst out with the power of his spirit talisman master identity. It could be regarded as the pinnacle attack of a spirit talisman master identity. It was a mixture of three kinds of spiritual thunder, a mysterious and powerful spiritual root, and the power of the mysterious cultivation method. How terrifying and powerful it was. This was also a Yuan spirit attack. How terrifying was its attack power? Rumble. On the martial-proof platform, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The terrifying silver-gold lightning covered the sky. The terrifying aura made the surrounding living beings tremble. The primordial spirit beast souls trembled. Many people were about to collapse. Not good. At this moment, it seemed that they all felt something at the same time. Many of their eyes suddenly changed. He has spirit thunders. On the martial-proof stage, Zhang Wanzhang was stunned. He guarded against Du Xiaofu's talisman array, and also guarded against Du Xiaofu's Yuan spirit attack. However, he did not expect that Du Xiaofu's Yuan spirit attack would be so powerful that he could not touch it at all. Du Xiaofu even fused a spirit thunders into his body. Du Xiaofu rarely used the power of a spirit talisman master, but it did not mean that his Yuan spirit was not powerful. Even the sacred elder of the golden-winged rock clan had praised Du Xiaofu's Yuan spirit power before. It was not inferior to the abnormal power of a martial artist. Moreover, Du Xiaofu's Yuan spirit had three types of spirit thunders. Bang! Du Xiaofu's punch landed directly on Zhang Wanjing's body. Although it looked like a light punch, it destroyed Zhang Wanjing's defenses as easily as crushing dry weeds. After that, Zhang Wanzhang coughed out a mouthful of blood. His body cracked as a bloody mist sprayed out. When he spat out the blood, Zhang Wanzhang was indeed one of the true geniuses of the school of vertical and horizontal. He actually came to his senses and screamed. However, it was too late. That punch was too mysterious. It destroyed Zhang Wanjing's body, and the power of the spirit thunders invaded his Yuan spirit. In the end, his body was sent flying and fell to the square below the martial-proof stage. He was severely injured, but he survived. Bang! Everyone watched as Zhang Wanjing fell from the martial-proof stage. At this moment, everyone's hearts seemed to have stopped beating. Spirit thunders. That arrogant kid's body has merged with a terrifying spirit thunders. In the distance, the eyes of the old man and elder from the school of legalism shone brightly. No one expected that the battle between Zhang Wanzhang and that arrogant guy would end up like this. Zhang Wanzhang was as if he couldn't withstand a single blow and was defeated instantly. He didn't even have the strength to attack again. This made everyone extremely shocked. How could this be? This is impossible, impossible. Zhang Wanzhang struggled to stand up and looked at Du Xiaofu on the martial-proof stage. His eyes were blank, and he couldn't believe that he had lost. He had lost in such a miserable and embarrassing way. He wasn't arrogant. He has the ability to do so. This is his true strength. In the distance, a beautiful, beautiful, and shy woman with a smile that was like a flower spoke. Not far away, Huang Linger's seven-colored eyes were also filled with divine light. You can't withstand a single blow. Next, famous expert. Du Xiaofu stepped into the air. His battle robe and hair fluttered as he looked around disdainfully. Suppress. Hui Mutian made his move. He directly jumped into the air above the martial-proof stage. The terrifying aura on the surface of his body surged like a storm. Mysterious runes covered his body, and he activated his martial vein. He was a supreme genius who cultivated the famous expert's supreme cultivation technique. His martial vein turned into a storm and swept across the sky. Hui Mutian also activated his martial vein spirit. It was a huge butterfly. When the butterfly spread its wings, it could cover the void. The shadow of a phoenix appeared on the butterfly's wings. The heavenly wind martial vein formed by the famous expert's wind energy and the ancient phoenix blood heavenly butterfly as his martial vein spirit. Hui Mutian is too strong. He's even stronger than Zhang Wanzhang. Hui Mutian used his full strength right from the start. He who strikes first gains the upper hand. The surrounding people exclaimed. They didn't dare to blink as they waited for the result. The martial vein spirit turned into a storm, and the ancient phoenix blood, heavenly butterfly, flapped its wings. Hui Mutian was worthy of being one of the famous experts. He was peerless and powerful. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Du Xiaofu made his move. With just a thought, silver-gold lightning arcs covered the sky and covered the earth. It was as if heavenly lightning was about to destroy everything. Du Xiaofu was clearly a spirit talisman master, but at this moment, he displayed the invincible demeanor of a martial artist. Du Xiaofu was too terrifying. It was as if he had crushed Hui Mutian in terms of cultivation realm. Cultivation realm was above everything. Then, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Du Xiaofu condensed a flood dragon in his hand and directly blasted Hui Mutian off the martial-proof stage. Bang! The entire square trembled. Hui Mutian coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. He had used all his strength and attacked first, but he still ended up like this. At this moment, only Hui Mutian himself knew that the primordial spirit in his mind was still resisting the remnant of the spiritual thunder. His primordial spirit was injured, and his body was not in good condition, still unable to withstand a single blow. Next, Buddhism. Du Xiaofu was in the air. He was arrogant and fierce. His battle clothes fluttered in the wind. At this moment, his aura was completely different from yesterday. He was like a supreme being in the sky. Amitabha, Heng Qi made his move. The string of Buddha beads hanging around his neck was thrown out. There were a total of 108 beads. Bright light shone and runes appeared in the sky. They turned into 108 Buddha shadows and gathered into a huge array. It suppressed Du Xiaofu. The sound of Buddha chanted and the Buddha light shone. It was as if it wanted people to put down their butcher's knife and become Buddha. Originally, there was nothing. So where did dust come from? Du Xiaofu made his move. He waved his hand and a golden saber shadow swept across the sky. He activated the third level of the Saber Soul Slash, Saber Soul Annihilation. The saber light was accompanied by silver-gold spiritual thunder. It was a world of difference compared to yesterday's attack. The saber radiance and electric arcs filled the sky, destroying everything and cutting through the void. The 108 Buddha shadows were destroyed, and deep cracks appeared on the 108 Buddhist beads. The saber light pierced through the sky and was not extinguished. It went straight for Heng Qi's forehead and wanted to shatter his primordial spirit. Heng Qi retreated quickly. The Buddha light shone brightly. His eyes were trembling. The runes on the ring's scar on his head flowed and turned into a golden vajra. Only then did he resist the terrifying saber light. Bang! But in the end, Heng Qi could not escape defeat. His body fell from the sky like a meteor. Du Xiaofu blasted him with a beam of energy from afar. PFFF! Fresh blood splattered on the ground. Heng Qi's body was cracked, revealing his white bones. He would not be able to recover in a short period of time. Slightly stronger, but still unable to withstand a single blow. Next, Taoism. Du Xiaofu stepped into the sky. He was like a true god of war. He looked down on the world and gave pointers to the heroes. Chapter 1545. Immeasurable Deity. Immeasurable. Now that Master Void Spirit had entered the arena, he had no way out. If he didn't even dare to enter the arena at this moment, the dignity of Master Void Spirit would no longer exist. Boom. Master Void Spirit used his full strength as soon as he attacked. He activated his Meridian Spirit and Martial Vein, and his aura could destroy the world. He also activated the extraordinary treasures on his body, which turned into many beast shadows. For a moment, the aura surged, the beast shadows roared, and the birds and beasts covered the sky. As the wind and clouds surged, they all rushed toward Du Xiaofu. Roar! This scene was too terrifying, and it shook everyone. Fierce winds blew, sand and stones flew, and runes intertwined with each other. A series of earth-shattering techniques were activated, and anyone who saw it would be shocked. Even the powerful cultivators watching from afar looked at Master Void Spirit with admiration. He was definitely one of the best among the younger generation. To activate so many techniques in a row, not only did he need to understand the profound meaning, but he also needed the support of surging Xian Qi. Roar! Du Xiaofu attacked. Lightning flashed, thunder rumbled, and silver and golden lightning arcs covered the sky. He activated countless beast energy and gathered it into a beast tide. With shocking roars and beast power, it swept out like a wave. In the rumbling sound of the void exploding, it directly broke through Master Void Spirit's technique. The beast tide destroyed everything, and wherever it passed, it destroyed the void and destroyed all the enemies. Go down. A beautiful saber light flashed through the sky and destroyed the void. That was Du Xiaofu's Saber Soul technique, Saber Soul Slash. It could destroy the opponent's body and primordial spirit. Master Void Spirit fell and finally landed on the square, staggering back. Crack! With each step, Master Void Spirit staggered backward. The ground under his feet was indestructible, and even the stone slabs of the square, which were reinforced by the array, showed traces of cracks. Blood flowed out from between his eyebrows. His eyes were dull, and his face was filled with shock. If you could kill on the martial-proof platform, your primordial spirit would have been destroyed, Du Xiaofu said to Master Void Spirit. His hair danced behind him, and he had a rough understanding of the top young cultivators of the 9 forces. They were very strong, and definitely not someone of the same level in the outside world could resist. There was no doubt about this. But compared to the golden-winged great rocks, Du Xiaofu felt that Master Void Spirit, Heng Qi, and the others couldn't even compare to Jialo Kaling. So long as Jialo Juekong, Jialo Jueo, and the others set foot in the beast region, they would be able to fight them directly. On the other hand, if Jialo Juekong and the others were at the same level as Master Void Spirit and the others, and were all at the peak of the domain realm, then they would be able to suppress them to the point of suffocation. Next, the Confucian School. Du Xiaofu pointed at the Confucian School. At this moment, he had single-handedly taken on the representatives of the 9 great clans. Just how peerless was his figure in battle armor. It made the surrounding creatures tremble inwardly. Boom! Yin Lihan stepped onto the martial-proof platform, but there was no way out. He channeled the power of heaven and earth and spat out a mouthful of blood, offering his blood to the sky. In my name, let the power of the wizard god descend upon me. As soon as he finished speaking, the sky changed color and a mysterious power descended. Resplendent runes fell upon Yin Lihan, causing his body to swell and his aura to rise. In the end, Yin Lihan became a 100-meter-tall giant. He looked like an ancient wizard god who had traveled through time and space. Everyone trembled. The enormous wizard god's body emitted a hazy mist. Its aura was terrifying, like a million mountains descending from the sky. It made people's hearts feel like they were going to explode and go limp. Rumble. The enormous body of the shaman god made a move, causing the entire sky to be covered in talisman markings and boundless and surging force. It was like a string of torrents had erupted, and it rumbled as it smashed down towards Du Xiaofu. That terrifying power caused the heavens and the earth to boil, and everywhere it passed, space would explode and shatter. That's the power of the wizard god. The predecessors of the Confucian school are related to the legendary great wizards of the primordial era. The power of the wizard god was once the strongest existence in the world. It has been passed down to this day, and it still has the power to destroy the world. A legalism elder in the distance spoke. The power of the wizard god was too terrifying. It had a glorious past that was hard for people to imagine. Du Xiaofu's battle robe fluttered. He was also moved by the power of the wizard god. Rumble. Immediately after, Du Xiaofu attacked. His whole body glowed, emitting an ancient aura. Silver-gold electric arcs intertwined, flickering resplendently. They formed a silver-gold long spear in front of him. It was as if lightning had gathered. When this silver-gold long spear gathered, the void suddenly rumbled and trembled. A supreme pressure descended. This silver-gold long spear was formed by Du Xiaofu's various methods. It pierced through the void, leaving a pitch-black crack in space wherever it passed. It destroyed everything in its path and finally collided with the enormous wizard god's body. Rumble. This collision caused the energy of the world to become chaotic. The sound of the collision was like thunder. The talisman arrays on the martial-proof platform were trembling. Talisman scripts filled the sky, and energy surged in the sky. The chaotic space gradually calmed down. The enormous wizard god's body was shrinking. After being pierced by the silver-gold long spear, it directly exploded, turning into broken talisman scripts and energy. The aura made the living beings tremble. Puff! Yin Lihan's body appeared. He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. At the same time, his body was also pushed back and fell into the square below the martial-proof platform. He staggered for more than 10 steps before stabilizing his body. His clothes were torn and tattered. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with shock. Next, Emo Clan. Du Xiaofu spoke. He stood proudly in the void above the martial-proof platform like a god of war. Emo Clan's Emo Junyu stepped onto the martial-proof platform. Her graceful figure was moving. Her entire body was covered in bright blue talisman scripts. She activated her meridian spirit. The aura of a peak mortal venerable filled the air. A shocking aura descended from the sky, turning the void above the martial-proof platform into a vast ocean. A huge divine turtle phantom appeared. The power of water can turn simple into complex. A drop of water can turn into a vast ocean. The meridian spirit of the ancient sea-swallowing divine turtle. An expert from the crowd spoke. That graceful and slender body actually contained such frightening power. The vast ocean stirred up thousands of huge waves. The divine turtle's cry shook the 9 heavens. It pressed down on Du Xiaofu. Break! Du Xiaofu soared into the sky. He stepped on the waves and waved his hand, destroying the divine turtle phantom. Go! Emo Junyu still had a treasure on her. It was a pearl that was as bright as the sun. It turned into a huge beast phantom. Roar! The beast phantom's roar shook the heavens. It was indescribably ferocious. It enveloped Du Xiaofu. Its aura was enough to crush an ordinary martial domain realm cultivator. It was definitely not an ordinary treasure. Roar! Du Xiaofu formed a hand seal and punched out an azure dragon phantom. It was like a fish in water in the vast ocean. It collided with the huge beast phantom. This collision was like raging waves crashing against the shore. It was about to shatter the void. The rumbling sounds shook people's souls. In the end, Du Xiaofu won by colliding with Emo Junyu's magical weapon. Everyone was shocked. Ding ding! A terrifying force swept out. Emo Junyu's figure was pushed back and fell to the ground below the martial-proof platform. Her beautiful figure was weak and her face was pale. However, her injuries were not serious. At this moment, Emo Junyu was secretly surprised. She could feel that the other party had done it on purpose. That vast force did not hurt her. That arrogant guy seemed to be holding back on purpose. He was not as fierce as he was against the school of Vertical and school of Emo. Could it be because she was a girl? The school of Emo has lost. Next, school of Inyang. Du Xiaofu no longer bothered with Emo Junyu. He turned his gaze towards Qi Jiejun. That young man was valiant and had a valiant bearing, exuding a heroic aura. He bore a faint resemblance to that holy and dignified woman. Arrogant, Qi Jiejun made his move. A mysterious aura spread out from his body. The light around him was like the stars in the sky. That arrogant guy was even more arrogant than him. This made Qi Jiejun feel very unhappy. Qi Jiejun's body was covered in starlight. He directly activated his martial vein and used his martial vein spirit to form a starlight armor. It was extraordinary and divine, like a holy spirit, noble and proud. It carried a vast aura that covered the sky and covered the earth. It made people's hearts tremble when they looked at it from afar. Rumble! A huge tree appeared in the sky. This tree was resplendent and translucent. The crown of the tree covered the sky. The leaves were like stars in the sky. At this moment, it was as if this world had suddenly fallen into the curtain of night. The pressure was rolling, and only the stars in the surroundings were densely packed. There was a river of stars hanging in the sky, and a vast aura covered the sky and earth. Tai Chi mystic, Yin and Yang. The stellar tree is the martial spirit. This Qi Jiejun is also a martial spirit. He is the youngest, but his cultivation is outstanding. He is indeed extraordinary. In the night sky, the stars revolved. Legalism experts revealed Qi Jiejun's strength. Chapter 1546. Du Xiaofu looked at the gigantic star tree with curiosity and surprise in his eyes. Suppress. Qi Jiajun exploded. His hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were like the two brightest stars. Activating his martial veins and martial spirit, they swept out together. It was as though he was pushing the stars in the sky. His aura was terrifying, and it was as though a river of stars was crashing down, suppressing the entire area. This attack was too strong. It was incomparably strong, causing Heng Qi, Su Lingzi, and Mo Junyu, and the others to shiver in fear. They felt that if they were to face Qi Jiajun now, the chances of them defending against such a terrifying attack were too slim. However, Du Xiaofu managed to defend against it. Under the shocked gazes of countless people, Du Xiaofu soared into the sky as though he was walking in the river of stars. Terrifying silver-gold lightning arcs burst out from his body, and he was like the brightest sun in the sky, dispersing the night sky and scattering the stars in the sky. The silver-gold lightning arcs burst out, bringing with them the pressure of a supreme being. A terrifying Yuan spirit energy swept out in all directions. The river of stars swept out, and the star tree suppressed. However, when it encountered Du Xiaofu at this moment, it completely dissipated and was neutralized. That spirit talisman master just had to fight with the demeanor of a peerless god of war. He was like an invincible martial artist, a ferocious beast that could sweep through all directions. It's really similar. In the distance, Huang Ling looked at the figure in the battle suit amidst the starry sky. That similar demeanor made her involuntarily think of a person. That person also had that kind of invincible posture, and at this moment, it also appeared on this guy. Seems familiar. It's like a person. In the Buddhist sect, Juling frowned slightly. That young man in battle armor on the martial-proof platform seemed like a familiar face. Qi Jiajun was shocked. He was actually being suppressed. Everything about him was being suppressed. That fellow was like a peerless supreme being that could sweep through everything, making it hard for him to withstand and destroy everything about him. Break, Du Xiaofu unleashed his might, and a terrifying storm of Yuan spirit energy swept out, breaking apart the stars in the sky. Then, his fist landed on Qi Jiajun's armor. Bang! The starlight armor on Qi Jiajun's body cracked and was directly shattered by the punch. The silver-gold lightning arcs surged like a sea of thunder. Dang-dang! In the end, Qi Jiajun was knocked off the martial-proof platform and landed on the square. Apart from the cracks on his armor, his injuries were light. Qi Jiajun was secretly astonished. He had clearly felt that the arrogant fellow had held back and hadn't used his full strength in that last punch. Next, the farmer family. Du Xiaofu spoke in the air above the martial-proof platform, drawing the attention of the crowd back to their senses. "Let's go," he said. Zhang Yunfeng was helpless, but there was no way out. Whether he won or lost, he had to go on stage. This was his own choice. Obviously, this choice was not wise, but he had already fallen into the trap. Bang! Zhang Yunfeng attacked with all his might. He didn't hold back at all. Regardless of whether he won or lost, he had to go all out. His martial vein and meridian spirit were activated. The entire void trembled and the ground rumbled. The farmer family's Li Xiaofu comes from ancient times. Countless ancient shocking experts have emerged from it. This Zhang Yunfeng can't be underestimated. Some people sighed at Zhang Yunfeng's strength. He wasn't inferior to Zhang Wanzheng and Hui Mutian, but he couldn't escape the fate of defeat. He was swept off the stage by Du Xiaofu. However, Zhang Yunfeng didn't suffer any serious injuries, so he didn't intend to continue the fight. Zhang Yunfeng already knew the outcome. That seemingly arrogant fellow was a terrifying existence. Unless the two fellows from the farmer's house made a move, it was impossible for anyone to stop him. Defeated. All the great clans lost. Is this real? Who can tell me if I'm dreaming? Is that guy really the reincarnation of the god of war? Too scary. Is that guy really just a talisman master from the outside world? Everyone was shocked. The representatives of the great clans had been defeated cleanly. Compared to yesterday, Gongsun Xiong, Su Haohui, and the others had been defeated in a more embarrassing manner. Su Haohui, Gongsun Xiong and the others, who were cursing inwardly, had their mouths wide open. They couldn't close their jaws. Their eyes were filled with shock. They had never thought that even Zhang Wanzheng and Hui Mutian, who were ranked in the top 3 of their clans, would be trampled so easily. That arrogant kid, the more I look at him, the more I like him. How good would it be if he was a disciple of the legalism school? As a matter of fact, there were even quite a few young girls in the densely packed group of legalists who began to feel their hearts ripple. That young man in battle robes swept across the 4 directions. He had a peerless demeanor. Is this true? Hurry up and tell me if this is true. Yu Bufan's eyes were dull as he stared at Mu Yuming. He pinched Mu Yuming's face fiercely. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Why are you pinching me? Mu Yuming cried out in pain and rolled his eyes at Yu Bufan. Then, he was also shocked. His heart trembled and his body trembled with excitement. He said, "It's real, it's real." Even Zhang Wanzheng, Hui Mutian, and Qi Jejun are no match for him. Dragon Fifth had been staring at the martial-proof stage. The shock in his heart was no less than the others. However, at this moment, he was not afraid. He even felt a little lucky. Dragon Fifth was glad that he could still fight. That arrogant kid had not been defeated by the 8 great clans. Dragon Fifth, it's your turn now. On the martial-proof stage, Du Xiaofu looked at Dragon Fifth. His eyes were shining, and his battle robes were fluttering in the wind. Good Yuan spirit energy. Dragon Fifth soared into the sky. Runes covered his body, and an illusory dragon shadow appeared around his body. Roar. When Dragon Fifth finished speaking, a surge of dragon might surged, the light that contained the might of a supreme being turned into a whirlpool. In the end, a white dragon that was at least 10,000 feet long rushed out of the whirlpool. At this moment, as the terrifying dragon power descended, there were immediately low roars in the surroundings. Everyone was trembling with fear. The terrifying dragon power came from the bloodline and beast soul. Unless one was strong enough, they could not resist it. The dragon roared in the sky, and the sound waves rolled, making the surrounding spirit beasts crawl. Under the dragon power, everyone trembled. It was a real dragon. The white dragon scales were shining, and there were 5 claws on its abdomen. No mixed blood dragon could compare to it. As the descendant of pure-blooded dragons, Dragon Fifth was proud enough. He even dared to be proud of the younger generation of the 9 great clans. To him, the humans of the outside world were only ants. The bloodline of dragons was enough to prove everything. It was said that in the ancient times, the beast race ran rampant in the world. The 3 legs of the Qilin, dragons, and phoenixes reigned supreme. Since ancient times, there were endless legends left. At that time, the human race was still insignificant. It's a pity that I, the dragons, am a primordial soul supreme. Boy, you can't be so arrogant anymore. The white dragon rushed to the martial-proof stage. Its huge body crossed the void, and half of it was submerged in the sea of clouds. The ferocious dragon swooped down, and its eyes were like the sun. The dragon claws tore through the air, and in the next moment, a roar sounded from its mouth like a sonic boom. Roar. The dragon roared continuously, and countless dragon shadows floated in the sky. The sound was melodious, but it could penetrate the void and make the world boil. In an instant, all kinds of supreme talismans covered the sky. The terrifying aura was peerless, and it shook the soul. It was as if the world was about to collapse. Everyone, shut your ears. This is the dragon soul heavenly roar of the dragons. A legalism expert in the distance transmitted his voice, and it landed in the square. That was the terrifying technique of the dragons. Not all dragons could successfully cultivate it, and it specialized in attacking the soul and primordial soul. That was the supreme technique of the dragons, and it was too terrifying. The dragon's roar was melodious, and the dragon's might was supreme. The sonic boom was accompanied by dazzling talismans, and it suppressed Du Xiaofu. It was a kind of supreme suppression on the primordial soul, and it was enough to destroy all primordial souls. The dragon soul heavenly roar was too terrifying, and it made Hang Qi, Su Lingzi, and the others close their 5 senses. However, Du Xiaofu was not afraid. It was just a primordial soul attack. Dragon Fifth's primordial soul attack was not weak. In fact, it was already abnormally strong. However, the problem was that Du Xiaofu's primordial soul was just as abnormally strong as his physical body. It was far stronger than Dragon Fifth's. No one knew that in Du Xiaofu's Naiwen Palace, the Scarlet Horse Monkey's primordial soul was sitting cross-legged on the 9 Revolutions Divine Lei Lian, and it was unmoved. Electric arcs spread out, and it was like a boulder. Roar! Dragon Fifth didn't just use his primordial soul attack. At this moment, his huge body swooped down from the sky, and he roared as he charged towards Du Xiaofu. His dragon claws tore through space, and his ferocious dragon mouth was like a blood-red vortex that could swallow everything. Du Xiaofu didn't say a word, but his figure disappeared from the spot at an extremely strange speed. He moved freely in the primordial soul attack and the sky full of dragon talismans. Dragon Fifth's expression changed when he saw Du Xiaofu's figure disappear from his eyes. However, it was too late. Du Xiaofu's figure quietly appeared on the dragon's head. In the next moment, under everyone's gaze, the young man in battle robes didn't look like a talisman master at all. He was like the reincarnation of a war god. He punched out, destroying space, and a pitch-black ring of light appeared around his fist. The punch landed directly on Dragon Fifth's head. Bang! A muffled sound came from Dragon Fifth's head. His dragon scales shattered, and his dragon skin split open. Blood splattered high into the air, and it looked very tragic. Bang, bang, bang. Du Xiaofu's fists were like a torrential rain as he punched several times in succession, aiming for Dragon Fifth's forehead. Roar, roar. Every punch hit flesh, and the power penetrated the dragon's bones, causing blood to splatter from Dragon Fifth's forehead. He screamed miserably, and in an instant, he was on the verge of death. His bloody mouth spat out dragon blood, and the dragon's blood dyed the martial-proof platform red. Boom! Dragon Fifth's huge white dragon body fell directly onto the martial-proof platform. Strictly speaking, he was smashed down from the sky by Du Xiaofu's fists. He fell heavily, causing the hearts of countless people to tremble. All of this happened too quickly, especially the last scene. It was completed in just a few breaths. The terrifying dragons, Dragon Fifth, a pure-blooded descendant of dragons, was being stepped on in front of everyone's eyes. He was on the verge of death and couldn't move at all. I've said it before, dragons have no right to be arrogant in front of me. Perhaps it was because he was from the Golden-Winged Rock Clan, or perhaps it was because he cultivated the Golden-Winged Rock Clan's cultivation technique, but Du Xiaofu had never had a good impression of dragons. Bang! At this moment, Du Xiaofu did not show any mercy to Dragon Fifth. In the end, he raised his leg and kicked Dragon Fifth's huge white dragon body off the martial-proof platform, causing dragon blood to splatter and dragon scales to shatter. Oh my god! That kick, which sent the dragon flying, was like kicking the hearts of countless people around, causing their hearts to tremble violently. That arrogant guy, how terrifying and arrogant was he, looking down on the world. The strongest representatives of the 8 great families and the dragons, Dragon Fifth, took action, but in the end, they were swept away by a talisman master from the outside world with the power of primordial spirit. This was a humiliation, a kind of supreme suppression, a kind of invincible and peerless style. Is this a kind of premonition? A premonition that our 9 great families are going to decline from now on. Among the onlookers, someone could not help but speak, feeling very depressed. A talisman master from the outside world is so tyrannical. How terrifying is this? All the onlookers were silent, feeling depressed. No one would think that at this moment, the young man in battle robes was arrogant and courting death. Just a moment ago, the young man in battle robes defeated the geniuses of the 9 great families with an invincible style. Was this kind of person just arrogant? Even if he was arrogant, for all the onlookers at this moment, it was a matter of course, because this was a world where strength was respected. This boy must be used by me. If he is used by others, then it will be a big problem for legalism. Among the legalism experts in the distance, someone spoke. On the martial-proof platform, Du Xiaofu looked around. His battle robes were stained with blood again, revealing a bit of fierceness, and said loudly, "Only legalism is left, Don't tell me that no one dares to go up." His voice spread out, resounding in all directions, echoing for a long time. Hearing these words, for almost all the disciples of legalism present, they were particularly frightened. That guy, in the end, was still thinking about legalism. Legalism had gathered all the outstanding figures of the younger generation, except for those who were in seclusion. Almost all of the top 1,000 and 1,000 were outside the Marshall-proof platform at this moment. However, at this moment, those originally valiant and extraordinary figures were secretly trembling. Pairs of bright eyes were looking at each other. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on the young man with an awe-inspiring temperament in the front. The awe-inspiring young man's eyes jumped. This was legalism. At this moment, he was the leader of the present. He could not retreat. The young man walked out, looking at Du Xiaofu. "Let me do it." Suddenly, a voice came from the distance, and when the last word fell, the figure had already appeared in the sky. Chapter 1547. It was a young man in his late 20s, dressed in a brocade robe. His black eyes were as dazzling as obsidian, revealing a heroic and awe-inspiring aura. On his handsome face, his seemingly calm eyes hid a sharp gaze. His aura was oppressive, making people feel that he was filled with an indescribable sense of danger. "Great, second brother is here." Li Chuya, who was defeated yesterday, was excited when he saw the young man in brocade robe. "Second brother is here. That kid is definitely no match for him." A woman wearing a long dress from the school of legalism was very excited. She was tall and slender, and her appearance was elegant. At this moment, she also agreed that the arrogant brat was very strong, unbelievably strong. However, when facing her second brother, she was bursting with confidence. Her second brother was absolutely undefeatable. No matter how strong that arrogant brat was, he was definitely not her second brother's opponent. "Brother Qinran is here. Brother Qinran is going to fight in person." Some of the legalism disciples who were originally frightened and looked at each other, when they saw the man in brocade robe appear, it was as if they were immediately injected with a cardiac stimulant. All the disciples inexplicably surged with an inexplicable confidence that ordinary people could not understand. Even many elders and powerhouses of legalism had a faint smile in their eyes at this moment. In the hearts of all the people from the school of legalism, the young man who had come was called Han Qianran. He was the strongest existence among the younger generation of the school of legalism. Even the other supreme figures paled in comparison to him. Of course, Han Qianran was the strongest existence of the younger generation of legalism, and the other two monsters had to be excluded. In fact, those two monsters had never fought in the clan. They probably hadn't fought outside for at least a decade. Under the witness of all the disciples of legalism, Han Qianran had always been the peak of the younger generation of legalism. He had never been defeated and had long been far ahead of his peers. Han Qianran. He's actually going to fight. Is he the Han Qianran of legalism? The young powerhouses of other major forces and families were attracted by Han Qianran at this moment. Han Qianran's name had already spread among the other big families and some top forces. Han Qianran, this name, was the strongest among the younger generation of legalism. When the young man in the brocade robe appeared in midair, the space on the entire Marshall-proof platform quietly froze. A faint breeze blew, but it was unable to disperse the tense atmosphere. Some of the legalism elders and experts present looked at the brocade-robed young man in awe. Such a transcendent youth had long surpassed the many experts and elders of legalism. The young man was rising proudly. Before too long, he would become the pillar of the school of legalism. He would be able to carry the banner of the school of legalism. The legalism youth who had just walked out saw the brocade-robed youth and immediately revealed a smile and reverence in his eyes. His serious expression instantly relaxed, and after bowing, he respectfully retreated. Du Xiaofu landed on the Marshall-proof platform and turned to look at the person who had just arrived. His eyes slowly surged with some light. The invisible majestic fluctuations that emanated from the person who had just arrived made Du Xiaofu's heart tremble. The person who had just arrived was indeed very strong. The martial veins in Du Xiaofu's body also fluctuated slightly. He felt a somewhat familiar aura from the young man. I didn't expect to be able to have such a small surprise on the Marshall-proof platform this time. However, I'm very sorry to tell you now. Just as Du Xiaofu was sizing him up, the brocade-robed youth also slowly traversed the space and directly landed on the Marshall-proof platform. Boom! When his feet appeared on the Marshall-proof platform, everyone could feel a monstrous aura from the young man's body that swept out in all directions like a storm. In that instant, the runes were dazzling and the handsome figure was wrapped in light. His heroic appearance was extraordinary, and a majestic aura gathered from the heavens and the earth, as if a divine king had descended. His handsome face was filled with a smile as he looked indifferently at Du Xiaofu and said casually, "You have already finished. You have no right to step on the Marshall-proof platform." When the smile on his face and his indifferent words fell, all the spectators in the square felt the heavens and the earth tremble, and the atmosphere completely froze. He's very strong. Experts like Hang Qi and Su Lingzi were all outstanding existences in their respective clans, and there was no need to mention the pride in their hearts. However, at that moment, they were secretly impressed by the brocade-robed youth. Just the invisible aura alone was enough to suppress them. If you want to challenge me, take out the treasure first. Otherwise, you still have no right. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's words caused everyone to be stunned. That arrogant fellow was actually still thinking about the treasure. After that, Du Xiaofu seemed to feel that he needed to emphasize again. He glanced at the brocade-robed youth and said, "Without the treasure, I don't have the time to play with you." Hearing that, the spectators in the square fiercely twitched their eyes. That fellow's head seemed to be filled with only treasures. The brocade-robed youth's eyes also twitched as he looked at Du Xiaofu. A smile appeared on his face, but it was a smile that was filled with contempt and indifference. Boom! The space trembled violently, and an item flew out from the brocade-robed youth's hand. The heavens and the earth instantly trembled, and the runes in the sky flickered. A terrifying aura rushed out, and a dazzling light rose up like the sun. The entire square was dazzling. It was an ancient and simple yellow wheel that emitted rumbling sounds. It revolved like a star, and it gave others a feeling of unparalleled pressure. The wheel was shining, and it was bathed in divine light. It was incomparably sacred, and a rain of light poured down. However, the sound it made was like thunder. When the ancient wheel appeared, all the disciples of the legalism school became solemn. Their faces were solemn, and there were even disciples who knelt down in front of the wheel. That's a half-step sacred tool. It has a spiritual saint soul that can protect our race. Some of the disciples of the legalism school exclaimed, and their expressions were solemn and respectful. At that moment, the purple gold heavenly tower in Du Xiaofu's divine watchtower emitted a rumbling sound, as if it was attracted by something. That feeling was something that even the coiling dragon war god armor and the Buddha shadow pearl did not cause. The purple gold heavenly tower is a prodigal thing. It seems like it wants to swallow that plate. Du Xiaofu thought. He communicated with the purple gold heavenly tower in his mind, and calmed down the restless soul of the purple gold heavenly tower. This plate is not bad. I can accept it. Du Xiaofu said seriously. He could feel that the ritual tool was extraordinary. It had a unique aura, and it was very powerful. As soon as he finished speaking, Du Xiaofu did not hesitate to set up a seal, and directly sealed the World Quake Plate in the void. That's the World Quake Plate, a half-step sacred tool. That arrogant brat actually called it a plate. Some of the disciples of the legalism school were angry. That was the World Quake Plate of the legalism school, a true half-step sacred tool. It was the closest thing to a sacred tool. Only someone like Han Qianran was qualified to own it. The young man in the brocade robe looked at Du Xiaofu and saw that he was setting up a seal on his World Quake Plate. He secretly showed some disdain and said, "I don't need the World Quake Plate to deal with you. I'm just letting you see it. It's a half-step sacred tool, the treasure of the legalism school. Noisy. Can't I study my own things myself?" However, Du Xiaofu interrupted the young man in the brocade robe. His words shocked everyone once again. It turned out that this guy already regarded the World Quake Plate as his own. The young man in the brocade robe looked at Du Xiaofu. His smile froze on his handsome face, and then it slowly faded away. Du Xiaofu's battle robe swept over him. He looked straight at him. Their eyes met, and suddenly their eyes shone brightly. The whole place was dead silent. They stared at the martial-proof platform without blinking. Everyone knew that neither of the two people on the platform would be easy to deal with. "Remember my name, Han Qianran. This will be the end of you." The young man in the brocade robe spoke. The light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. A terrifying aura erupted, gathering the energy of heaven and earth in all directions. It shook the void, and the entire martial-proof platform suddenly surged. Du Xiaofu knew this name. He had learned from Li Da's primordial spirit that this was the strongest existence among the younger generation of the legalism school. He was an existence that his peers in the legalism school could not catch up with. "Also remember my name, the God of War. The God of War that cannot be defeated. The God that cannot be defeated." Du Xiaofu spoke. He waved his fists and stared at Han Qianran. When his voice fell, a bright light surged on his body. A terrifying aura filled the air. Silver-gold lightning arcs filled the sky, and a terrible primordial spirit storm swept across. A very strong primordial spirit that has integrated with the spiritual thunder. This kind of talent can be regarded as unprecedented for an outsider. However, I also have a spiritual thunder. Han Qianran smiled, but the coldness on his face gradually became more intense. Then, a golden thunderbolt suddenly burst out from between his eyebrows and shot into the sky. A terrifying energy fluctuation suddenly surged through the whole world. Then, an extremely strange golden lightning arc with golden lightning flashed across the sky. The golden lightning arc exploded in the sky and swept in all directions. Crash! Dazzling golden lightning poured down as countless golden bolts of lightning descended from the sky. They were densely packed and enveloped the entire martial-proof platform. The martial-proof platform was like a prison made of lightning, and it completely enveloped Du Xiaofu. "It's a spiritual thunder." Du Xiaofu looked around. The thunder martial vein in his body suddenly began to stir. The primordial spirit of the red-bone horse in his mind suddenly lit up with bright lightning arcs. What made Du Xiaofu even more surprised was that the strange round stone in his mind's Niwen palace seemed to be affected by something at this moment and wanted to break free from his mind. The divine thunder of the heavenly soul. That kid will definitely lose. The terrifying thunder might rolled and the golden lightning flashed in the sky. Countless disciples of the legalism school trembled and smiled. That kid could no longer be arrogant. "Kid, it's time to end it. You relied on the spiritual thunder to run rampant. Now that you've been defeated by my divine thunder of the soul destruction, it's the real end. I'll even give you a chance to set up the talisman array, the greatest reliance of the talisman master.